This episode was first recorded in November 2017. Jen Simpkins, what is your favourite game?
My favourite game is The Witness. I have two older brothers and much older than me. I was adopted when I was 5, and my brothers were 12 and 14 at the time. And so basically they always had the consoles growing up, because, you know, back in the day the boys have the consoles. And they were much older, so they had their consoles. So I think the first thing I ever played on was, I was born in 93, so I'm pretty young. So it was an original Game Boy, like the proper big fat grey brick, and we had one of those amazing little clip-on lights, obviously because the screen wasn't backlit. So it had a clip-on light, so I could play it in the car. After I got my brothers to let go of it for like a second. And what do we have there? We had I remember Fortified Zone, which is like nothing to do with anything, I don't think, but you could basically be like a dude or a woman, and I was always the woman, obviously, because she was kick-ass and had like kick-ass Lara Croft shorts. It was awesome. And you just like jumped over spike pits and like shot things, and there were boss fights, and that was pretty cool. And we had this weird like thing that I'm pretty sure was like Paperboy, but I've since tried Googling it. And I can't really like find what it was, but I swear to God, you just had to ride on your bike and like throw newspapers onto doormats and letterboxes, mailboxes. Yeah, fascinating stuff, obviously. So I played a lot of that. And we also had a PS1, yes, and we had like all the Crash Bandicoot games, and I was obsessed with Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, even though I was like awful at it. This was probably all when I was around, I obviously wasn't 5, I was like probably like 7 or something when I started actually picking up the pad and playing games. So I basically like inherited all my older brothers' like stuff, or I would like sneak on when they weren't using it. Later on, we had a PS2. What did we have for PS2? Would it have been GTA Vice City? Would that have been on the PS2? I remember.
That would have been PS2.
Yes. Yeah, I remember playing GTA Vice City when I was, probably like 8 or 9. So definitely not allowed.
No!
Again, Mortal Kombat Deception. We also had. I think maybe I was a little bit older for that as well, but like not much. I used to sneak up. Sorry, Mum and Dad. I used to sneak up to my brother Dan's room, and plug in the PS2 and play Mortal Kombat Deception, which was very gory and gruesome. And I used to be obsessed with trying to find all the like was it like environmental kills? We could like kick people into like pits and stuff like that, chuck them off the top of bridges. That was great. Um,
Did you not play any other adult games when you shouldn't have been?
yeah. Probably most. Like I have two cousins as well called Annie and Glyn, and again they were another sort of side of the family where I was sort of introduced to gaming, and they had a PC, and I think I played Vice City firstly on the PC, and then we had it for PS2. Um, but yeah, so we would play that together, and kind of like when we were away from our parents, and maybe Annie and Glenn's parents are out of the room, so we were just like playing whatever, which was great, and like super beneficial. I think I think it was like I've written kind of short like bloggy things on it before, but like sort of like growing up like around kind of violent games made me sort of learn there was like a time and a place for like violence and profanity and stuff. I don't know. I feel like it kind of yeah, it was went some way towards sort of becoming more mature about those things. I was never like a bad kid, so I don't think like violent video games fucked me up. I think we're all good. Um, but yeah, don't tell my mum and dad. Oh my god, I'm so disappointed. And then what else? Oh yeah, and of course, we had a PC as well. And my brother Luke, I used to sit next to him when I was quite young and watch him play Medal of Honor Allied Assault, which I loved. And like occasionally he would give me a go, and obviously I'd be rubbish at it because I was little and it was really hard. But I loved how tense that was. It was like it was kind of like watching someone play a horror movie in front of you. You're just like oh, it's like trying to find med kits and stuff. So yeah, so that was kind of how I grew up and stuff. Oh, and then when I was in my mid-teens, I got a DS Lite for Christmas. That was finally I'd finally got my own console really, and I wasn't just sort of like playing everybody else's. This was mine for me, and I loved it. It came with Animal Crossing Wild World, which, as you know, Johnny, started a lifelong love of that game. Yeah, but, like I guess Mum just like bought it for me with the DS, just like this looks non-threatening, and I like completely fell in love with it. Yeah, and got really good at like Mario Kart DS stuff like that. Yeah, and like that was sort of really when, and I was in secondary school at the time, sort of probably like 14, and we'd all like play it together at lunch, and you'd have kind of like the little wireless link up and play Mario Kart together, or New Super Mario Bros. Had a co-op mode. My friend at the time, Vicky, me and Vicky got obsessed with it. Where have you ever played that on the DS and like the local co-op
No,
mode?
I've not.
So one of you is Mario and one of you is Luigi. And like basically it's like a head-to-head match across this kind of like scrolling small map with all these little obstacles on, and you're trying to collect these like huge like stars, right? And whoever makes it to like 10 first wins, and you can like bop each other on the head to like get stars back. And it, like we got insanely good at it as well. So yeah, I think the DS Lite was like yeah, that really sort of started to make me fall in love with games and like play Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney and was like, I'm gonna be a lawyer when I'm older, just like Elle Woods. And that did not pan out. So I was like, actually, that sounds really boring. Turns out it's not like quite like Ace Attorney. So that was a disappointing realization that life wasn't going to be like video games. Yeah, and yeah, just ended up getting really obsessed, and like sort of every Christmas I'd get a new Ace Attorney, and one Christmas I actually asked my parents to import electroplankton for me. Have you heard of electroplankton?
It rings a bell. I don't know.
So it's a Toshio Iwai game, but it's kind of like a non-game where you touch different sort of like bacteria, I guess, like cells, and they've all got like funny little faces, and they make noises, and each level has like a different sort of musical theme, and you can sort of like create your own tunes and loops and little like melodies from each, and it's like really zenned out and cool, and like cost a fortune I think to like import from Japan, but it was worth it, and I loved it, and I played the shit out of it, out of this weird non-game. So yeah, I think like that was what with that and like Animal Crossing, like a bunch of other really interesting stuff. That was when I started sort of getting into more sort of like experimental games almost, really. And then when I got a little bit older than 14, and I was kind of, just like coming out of puberty and like hormones raging, and games kind of took a back seat. And also I didn't have my own computer. We had like a family computer, so I never really, and I didn't have like a TV and a console in my bedroom. I wasn't allowed. So yeah, I never really had like my own stash of games other than my like DS. And then just before I went to university, I got my own computer, which was a MacBook, which I still have. It's still going strong. And that was when I got like heavily back into gaming, and into Steam sales, and I would like, there's not a lot of stuff that actually plays on the Mac. So what I would do is I had this. I don't know if this is illegal or not. I don't think it is. It might be, but there's this program you can get called Wineskin, where you can make like code wrappers to trick like your computer into thinking that a PC game is like compatible with Mac. So I used to like wineskin a bunch of games for that, and that kind of got me through university a lot. Yeah, and that was really valuable for university, and that was when I sort of like really got caught up on a lot of like some of the biggest and like most important titles, and I was like, yeah, I think I played BioShock that way, and it was like the first time where I was like, oh, like this. I was off to study a literature degree like in the next year or so, and I was like, oh man, this is like different to kind of other games, and like I saw how interesting games could be narratively, and then I was like, oh, I wonder if there's a job where you can write about this stuff, and it turns out there was. So yeah, so that's sort of how I started thinking, oh, maybe I could write about why I like all these games, why I'm so into all these games, and why BioShock made me feel the way it did. So I like set up my own little sort of bit part WordPress blog, and just like typed up my own rambling thoughts on games that were like way too old. Or not old, but like, I should have been playing like 3 years ago or whatever. And yeah, did that, and sort of started writing for a couple of like small like friend run sites. Met people through Twitter and things like that. A site called Vexoid, which is still kind of around, but like lots of people. A guy called Aman found me on Twitter and was like, "Oh, hey, I read your blog and it's really fun. Come write with us." So I had fun like hanging out with all those guys. Wrote for like IND13 magazine. Which I think is how you say it. I don't think we ever agreed. But that was, yeah, all about like indie games and stuff like that. Did some interviews at Yuki and things. Yeah, and did some like regular sort of journalism alongside my literature degree as well, just on campus. And then from there, that was kind of all the stuff I put on my CV and sent off along with a writing sample. To Official PlayStation magazine when the staff writer job came up, which was September after I graduated? No, summer after I graduated. And I was like, I'll give it a shot. It was the first job I'd applied for out of uni, and I was like, well, I won't get it, but I try. And then I got it, which was really cool. And I put a BioShock Easter egg in my cover letter, which I think swung it for me, because when I went into the interview, they had it highlighted. It was an acrostic in my cover letter, and they had it highlighted. It was a bit cheeky. It said, "Would you kindly hire me?" And I figured, well, if I write this, then they can't not hire me, right? They have to if they're true gamers. And lo and behold, it worked. But I knew Matt Pellett, who was the editor at the time. I knew he had a bit of a weakness for Easter eggs, so I thought I'd be cheeky, and I think it paid off. Yeah, well, obviously it did. Yeah, and I went on to APM.
Yeah, it obviously did, because then that about autumn of 2015 you were hired, and I can remember this because me and you nearly met just after you were hired.
I was at the GMAs, yeah, and somehow we missed each other. I can't believe that.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Just two
Unbelievable.
ships passing in the night, Johnny. And what is it now? 2017? We still don't meet each other? Unbelievable. You must come down to London sometime.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
Get a move on.
Sometime. And then 2 years later, you're now deputy editor of Edge.
I am, yeah. Incredibly, I worked hard, but also incredibly fortunate that a vacancy came up, and I was sort of able to shuffle on over to Edge, which is quite the shuffle. And yeah, having an absolute blast, and it's just, it's amazing to work from Edge, having, been picking it up on newsstands alongside like OPM and all those other sort of future titles when I was at university, and then to be writing for them, and now to be writing for Edge. Kind of crazy, but great. It's going great, and yeah, I feel like I'm exactly where I belong at the moment. So it's really cool.
Right. Let's talk about your favourite game, The Witness.
Let's, because I could talk people's ears off, and I have done in the past. So more fool you for letting me do it on your podcast.
More fool me. It's a fairly recent game as well.
It is.
So that's kind of like, do you think that kind of factor has kind of clouded your judgment a little bit, or is it like still worth this is still worth it being my favourite game, even though it is such a recent game? Oh, to be fair, I am sort of speaking hypocritically here, because then I have The Last of Us, my favourite game, and I decided that it was my favourite game literally minutes after finishing it. So what the fuck am I talking about?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction with The Witness, but although you kind of finish it multiple times, so I kind of had that moment over and over again, and it's actually been a long time since I've picked it up, and I could have talked about kind of various games. There's various games that are very important to me and special to me, and that I love for various reasons, but The Witness, man, it's something else, and I feel that everyone who's played The Witness does go on about it like they're in some sort of creepy cult, which I am now a member of, but it really is that good, and it feels that important, and yeah, it's a difficult one, because it's a very difficult puzzle game at times, although like it does such a good job of teaching you that it doesn't feel that difficult. But it's such a shame that I think comparatively few people have really seen what it has to offer, because for me it's on par with great works of literature, for me, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that, and I've studied literature, and as an act of sort of artistic communication, The Witness is really such an achievement, and I think it needs to be talked about, like, really at length.
Like, you say it's similar to works of literature. Like, what kind of works do you think it stands alongside with?
Just sort of David Foster Wallace type things, which is a tricky thing to say, because they're very, very difficult pieces with kind of lots of layers, but like infinite jest and things like that. I think when Jonathan Blow, who developed The Witness, had been talking about it before, he was saying, I want to make a game like Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, you know, and I think he has done that. But like any sort of like any work of literature, right? Like, even if it's not like one of those crazy highfalutin ones, like any sort of novel with any like meaningful depth has sort of layers of interpretation to it that sort of come out upon like the second and third and fourth readings, and different themes that are connected, and that you can kind of piece together and be like, oh, this character means this, and then this thing means this, and that all adds up to this certain theme. And The Witness is like that, in that it's quite abstract, but kind of when you look at it from these different angles, and the game is all about perspective, both literal and otherwise. When you look at it from all these different angles, sort of different meanings and messages sort of float into view. Yeah, it's an incredibly like detailed work, and all of those different angles of viewing are thought about, like both in a literal way, because there's lots of sort of fun perspective tricks in the game, and in a more poetic way, in that you can ascribe kind of like lots of different interpretations to it, which is all very abstract, and I feel like we're not really talking about what The Witness actually is, which is a puzzle game where you solve mazes for like 80 hours. Yeah, it's a first-person puzzle game set on an island, and the island is like beautiful and natural and full of sort of mysterious ruins, and stone statues that are never really quite explained. Um, well, and but most importantly, lots and lots of square panels and LCD screens, I guess. Screens? I don't know. I don't know much about screens. But I do know a lot about puzzles now. But they're all the same kind of puzzles. They're these mazes, and you have to get from point A to point B, and you use your little cursor on your, with your gamepad or on your iPad now. It's out on touch and that. iOS, and you get from point A to point B doing just like tracing a line through a maze, and that's kind of it, which is maybe the most like brave thing I've ever seen a developer do, is be like, my puzzle game has the same type of puzzles in it for 80 hours, but it works because they're all mazes, but they've all got completely sort of like different aspects to them. So the island's split up into lots of different areas, and that's kind of visually represented by sort of like lots of colour changes. There's a beautiful orange autumnal forest, and then there's like lots of sort of pink cherry blossom trees in one area, and then there's a huge sort of golden desert in another, and like a sort of red marshy swampy area in another, and in each area there's a different sort of play on these maze puzzles. So one area, for instance, is almost kind of like fitting together Tetris shapes, and you kind of have to draw them by tracing a correct line through the maze, and sort of make the correct shape. That one's hard to describe. But there's other ones that are like sound cues, which are really cool. So you have to listen to a melody, and then according to the pitch, that might give you the solution to draw the maze, because you're going, maybe if it's like two high notes, you're going up, up, and then if it's a medium low note, you go down, and then if it's a lower note, you go down, and then that provides the solution, right? You draw the line, the waveform almost. And then in another one, what else is there? There's like just like ones where you just have to separate black and white dots, perhaps, and then multiple colour dots, and then there's another section where you have to kind of group shapes into pairs, and I don't know, it all sounds very boring, doesn't it? It does all sound very boring. That's the thing, isn't it? I played Braid, which Jonathan Blow made before, but I didn't get all the stars or anything. And I thought it was great, but it didn't get me like The Witness did. But I don't like logic puzzles, like almost at all. I'm shit at Sudoku, and I hate them, and I don't understand them. I don't know, I'll do a crossword because there's words in it and I like words, but if someone had sat me down and been like, oh, do you want to play this game about like just like loads of like logic puzzles and you probably have to do a bit of maths and that, I'd be like, nah. But Matthew Pellett was playing it at the time. I was on OPM at the time when it came out, and I started playing it, and I was excited for it because it's a Jonathan Blow game, and I'd like Braid, and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And Matt Pellett would wax lyrical about it, and I was like, oh yeah, all right, oh yeah, it can't be that good, can it? But it's rather brilliant. Because the thing about The Witness is that it is just about maze puzzles, but also it's about several other things, and really the game is about noticing those other things. And then once you notice these things, it sort of throws everything else into a different perspective. There's multiple endings to the game, and so you'll go through and you'll say, okay, you're trying to get all these lasers right to point at the top of the mountain, and every time you complete one of these areas, I've talked about one of these areas of the island, and you've mastered separating the dots or like drawing the pictures of certain bird calls or whatever, then you unlock a laser. And the laser points towards the top of the mountain. And I think, so there's 7 in total. Oh, no, there's 11 in total. And then if you get 7, you can basically like unlock the ending sequence and sort of the end game. It's not really the end game. And so you do that. But along the way, if you notice things, and I'm a person that notices things, right? I think The Witness is really great because it's for a few different kinds of people. I'm not really a logically minded kind of person. I don't really like logic puzzles. I'm not really a puzzle game player usually. But another very important aspect of the game is just noticing patterns in things, which I guess is like logic puzzles, but in a more sort of artistic way. And I've always been very good at that. And I've always really enjoyed that, like sort of hunting for secrets or like noticing the way something might look like something else. And so like having a more artistic like view on the world. And saying like, oh well, right, like doesn't that cloud look like a horse or or like a baby or a snake breathing fire? That's a dragon, isn't it? But so lots of The Witness is about that as well. And I kind of uncovered one of the big secrets of The Witness fairly early on on my own, and the game actually does later on sort of point you towards that discovery a little more obviously, and I think that's where most people get it. But if you're someone who's a little bit observant like me, you will find it earlier and you'll be like, what the hell is this? So if you found that and you complete the game for the first time, you then sort of walk around the island again because there's so much more to do. And sort of you see everything in a different light. It's like, I don't know, man. Let me give you an example. It's like I once took it's like a cognitive behavioral therapy course, right? And the instructor said, okay, let's do a quick exercise. I want everyone to like look around the room and try and tell me like everything you can see that is red. And so we were like, oh, okay. And we looked around the room and I was like, okay, there's a red thing there, and the Coke can's red, and the lampshade is red. Right? And then she was like, okay, cool. And then she was like, now tell me everything in the room that was green. And we were like, because if you're not looking for it, you don't see it, right?
Yeah.
But say you did notice something and then you were like, ooh, that's an interesting shade of green. And then you start seeing it everywhere, right? And if you're lucky, or if you're observant, or if you pay attention to what the game tells you, there's a moment like that in The Witness, and it's like this huge epiphany, and it's like, you know, the kind of feeling of satisfaction when you beat a puzzle and you're like, yes, I've seen the answer.
Yeah.
It's like that on a much, much bigger scale, and you're like, whoa. And then everywhere you go in that world, you start seeing it. And it's like someone, again, it's like, I can't talk about it in a creepy cult way because I'm trying to convince people I'm not in the creepy witness cult. But it's like someone's opened your eyes for the first time, or you've had this like huge realization, or, you know, like if I believed in God, and I don't know if I do, but like, this is getting crazy. But like, you know, like it's like someone's told you something and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, now I see. And there's a moment like that in The Witness, and it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And it came quite early on for me, and it was magical. But then there's more moments like that in The Witness, and you kind of get addicted to like this epiphany high, because there's so many layers to unravel, where once you notice the next thing, suddenly whole new aspects of the world are opened up. And not in a literal way, like, oh, okay, no, this door... Well, sometimes in a literal way, like, okay, now I can solve this puzzle and open this door, right? Because I understand. But, like, more often in a way that you start to notice things that have been built into the game in details where you go, oh, okay, now I'm really understanding what those are about. Now, are you still with me? Yeah.
I'm still here.
Are you still alive? Am I making any sense here? Do you need to course correct me? It's so hard because it's like I don't want to spoil anything because the whole point of this game is
Discovery.
You do something quite simple and you kind of enjoy this beautiful environment, and it is beautiful that's been made for you, and it's also really creepy because it's very quiet. I think a lot of people have criticised it for that, but I was convinced. I was like asking other people who were playing it at the same time I was like, something's gonna fucking jump out at me at some point, and this shit's gonna become like a horror show. I can just feel it. I don't trust this island. It's creepy. But yeah, now I've lost my train of thought. I'm getting excited about the witness. But yeah, you're kind of left to stew in your own like mind in that world, which is. It's something that's very difficult. I think for me as a person as well, it's a weird one. And it's not like I haven't had bad experiences with the game as well, because I definitely have. Because when it's so much a game that is built wonderfully, almost Nintendo-like in the fact that it can teach you wordlessly things, and it's like, if you solve this panel, and like there's no hints popping up on the screen or like, oh hey, did you try drawing here? None of that. It just sort of puts you in this very weird silent world with these weird techie like sound effects every time you draw this maze, which I found unnerving as well, like weirdly. And it sort of goes, okay, I trust you. You can figure it out by like saying nothing, doing nothing. And if you get stuck, if I got stuck on a panel, I'd be like, fuck it. And you can just walk away and go to a different section of the island, and you can just go, okay, cool, I'll come back to it. But they're all lined up, so if you solve one panel, then the next one kind of flickers into view, and you're like, oh, okay, like a wire lines up, and often you're following these wires, like through the undergrowth and stuff like that on this island, just to the next panel. And it teaches you in little steps, right? Like kind of in the way a Nintendo game would, hopefully not without too many tutorials. But yes, again, so much of that game, because of that, is leaving you to your own devices and sort of silently trusting you that you are good enough and that you can work it out and that you are smart enough. Which is a weird experience. Like a lot of games nowadays, obviously, they don't want people to be stuck, so they go, okay, oh well, and like often, in games nowadays, I don't want to be stuck, and I'm like, oh, I feel like an idiot and embarrassed, and like, why can't I work this out? But the witness just sort of refuses, and it's, I think some people can think it's cold, but honestly, for me, it's like a remarkable like level of trust from game to player that it's like, you know what, give it enough time and walk away and take a breather and solve another puzzle maybe and think about something totally different, and come back to it, and like you'll get it, and often you do. There's so much of that game is built around like giving you some space, and giving you some time, but it is a difficult game because, especially if you're a certain type of person like me, like I especially used to be a highly anxious person, right? And like when I get in my own head, that's often when I have the most problems, like in my life, and like with being anxious, because I tend to overthink things, right? And like I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so that's not good with these games because there is the solution. You have to get it right. Yeah, so it can be quite like emotionally taxing as well, right? Because you're sort of just left with yourself and your own failings. But then when you do get it right, there's a huge moment of victory, and like that's why for this game it's like you just can't look at a walkthrough because it will completely ruin your entire enjoyment of the game. And unfortunately, like some of your enjoyment of the game is like after those moments where you're like, fuck this game. Like this is impossible. Like this is an impossible puzzle and I'm just being trolled. But of course you're not, like you're being trusted. You're not being trolled, and that it is a weird sensation sometimes as someone who plays games in this age where, maybe you'll be left to it for a bit and then it'll kind of go, hey, see, you're a bit stuck there. Like paper clips from Word. I see you're having trouble with this bullshit maze puzzle. Can I help? Go away, Clippy. Yeah.
There's a certain intrigue about The Witness that's kind of hard to fathom unless you've really gotten into it and like you really know the gameplay loops, the secrets, the diaries, the stories, and all that there.
Mm.
And even then, like for me, I've not really delved into it that hard, but like there is definitely, even when you've only played it for like at most 15-20 minutes, you do still feel that intrigue is there.
Yes.
And like, yeah, I'm wondering how you felt with that kind of intrigue. Like it's kind of hard to turn that into a question, but like at the same time, like yeah, like how did you find that kind of intrigue?
Honestly, that's something that like pushed me on a lot. Like, yeah, in fact, it was like probably the main thing that pushed me on. Especially because I knew other people were playing it, and I knew that other people had found out some like really cool stuff. Obviously, they didn't tell me what it was, but I was like, oh man, like there's secrets to be had. Like, I don't know. I feel like anyone who's playing games like wants to go backwards in the level and like find the secret coin, you know, like that there's such a like rush that comes with that, where you're like, oh, aha, like again, it's like about that discovery and those epiphanies, and you're like, oh, I want that moment for myself, like and The Witness is full of those things. So like even when I was like, you know what, I really don't enjoy maze puzzles and like sometimes I really didn't enjoy them, and there were parts of the island where I was like, I don't like this bit. Like, I don't like the marshes. I don't like Tetris. I'm bad at it. I still don't really get it. Or at least I feel like I'm struggling to get it. But it was always the thought of, like, if I do this, then I can unlock a laser. And then if I unlock one more laser, then I get to see what's in the mountain. And yeah, there's so many things like that in that game that that pushed me on, even when I was like, this is miserable. Like there were moments where you're just like, I'm kind of bored of this, but then I was just like, oh, I really have to see what's next, and I really have to see the next layer, and there's always a sense, again, it has that sort of like general vibe where you know that there's something else there. That's exciting to me.
At the same time, though, like you said, like, or well, I mentioned about the intrigue of The Witness. You said that The Witness is more akin to being part of a cult. Like, talk about what you mean by that.
Again, because like it's one of these games that has like layers of knowledge almost. Again, yeah, it's like, I mean, The Witness is full of like different little languages and like symbol languages where if you find out in one area that this symbol means this, then you go, and then you go to another area and suddenly it's like knowledge is power, right? Like you can unlock this door because you know what's being asked of you. So what was the question?
I was that was the question.
The like culty thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you kind of, when there are these like certain things where you get the first ending and you're like, okay, I know what that is about, and now I go through a second time with like a bit more information, suddenly I'm seeing different things, and then you see the second ending and you're like, oh, and then there's a third ending, and it's almost like, I shouldn't compare it to Scientology, but you know when you have like levels that are like Master Dragon and like Supreme Wizard. Wait, is that the KKK? I think it is. But like, you know, it's just like you've kind of like, you have an understanding at one level, but then once you've completed it in a different way, like with your knowledge of all these other secrets and how they feed into something bigger, then you can kind of talk with your friends who have kind of attained that level, and you're like, you know, and you can kind of sort of like suss people out from like how much they've played by the way they talk about it and things like that, or yeah, and that's really interesting, and it's nice that even though it does get a bit culty maybe, there's nice that are those layers, because on level 1, like, you know, it's just like a really good puzzle game, and if you really like puzzles, you'll just really enjoy it at a superficial level anyway. But if you're like me and you're not necessarily in it for the puzzles, but you're in it for the ambience and the secrets and the discoveries and the epiphanies, then there's even more to be got out of it.
You mentioned it in slight part there, but like, how you weren't in it rather for the puzzles, rather for the secrets and the diaries and the ambience and all that there. Like, The Witness doesn't really have a traditional story, but, like, how did you, like, go into it, like, knowing that you weren't really going in for the puzzles, but rather just for lack of a better term, the lore?
I just went into it looking for other stuff, I think, which is I think why I cottoned onto a lot of other stuff quite quickly, because I was looking elsewhere, right? Like, I wasn't just focused on the panels, like, I was focused on what was going on around it. The game does a really good job, actually, of sort of blurring that line between panel and the environment around it. Like, quite a lot of solutions are like very much tied to the place in which the puzzle is and the things that are around it. And that's really cool. But yeah, like, again, like, for me, a lot of it felt like I was just trying to get through like the line puzzles, because once I found the part of a tree that looked like a man setting a fire, or the like the shadow that made it look like someone was like juggling instead of like crying, like, those sort of things were really interesting to me. And yeah, again, like the little diaries, the recordings left around, at first I was like, wow, these are mega pretentious. I don't really get the point of these. But I was like, but maybe I will if I keep going. And the more you find, the more you kind of start to build up a picture of what they might be referring to. And I'm not convinced like that they're all like perfectly in harmony anyway, but they're not supposed to be. But there's like a definite theme that sort of, like, as you go towards sort of the end of the game, that it leads towards, and that to me was like so much more intriguing. It's just that to get there, I had to do these maze puzzles. But the game did a great way of a great thing in flipping my expectations of the maze puzzles, like, quite quickly, because yeah, I went in for the ambiance and the secrets and the story and the mystery and the intrigue, but the more of these panels I solved and the more of them I found and the more like crazy solutions I found, the more I was like, oh, like, these maze puzzles are actually really rad, which was really cool. Like, for instance, there's one that made me laugh out loud. Like, a maze solution made me laugh out loud, and it didn't spell the word boobs or anything, I swear. Um, but like, there's so much room for like visual comedy as well, which I think is that was really exciting to me, because I went in expecting quite a dry game, and it's actually a very human game. I think people get that wrong about The Witness a lot. I think they think it's a very cold, calculated game, whereas actually it's like it's got this incredible artistic flair. I always say there's two sides to The Witness. There's kind of the logical side and the artistic side, and if there's a bit of both in you, you'll love it. Or like, even if you're more of an artist, there's so much to love, and even if you just like love the logic of it, as like a few of my friends who played did it, like real mathematicians, you'll love it too. So there's so many shades like on that sort of spectrum there.
Was that kind of obsidian, like, observation side of you, like, really keen on that factor, that there was no traditional story, that it had you more had you paying attention more to those little nods?
I think so. But like, especially at the beginning as well, I do remember being frustrated that there wasn't kind of a straightforward answer. I remember especially getting the first ending, which is not too much of a spoiler to say that it. I don't know. I'm tempted to kind of like spoil the manner in which it does it, because it's so bizarre. But it just takes you right back to the beginning of the island via a very interesting mode of transport, basically. And I remember being like, "This is bullshit. Is that the end of the game? Like, what's the point of all that?" And like, there didn't seem to be a story to that. And I think I was looking for some sort of like, The Witness is about this. And I was maybe expecting that to be spelled out by that point, which was probably like the 50-hour mark. But of course it wasn't, and of course there's a reason why you're taking back to the beginning of the island, this time with all of your accumulated knowledge of not just the panels, but the thing outside the panels. And as there often is in games, there's something at the beginning. There's a couple things at the beginnings actually where suddenly you see them with these new eyes. So yeah, and then that kind of sets you down the path to The Witness is about this, which is I think the story I was looking for at the beginning.
So the puzzle design itself, like, you've said yourself, like, you're not a puzzle gamer. So, like, in terms of how The Witness's puzzle design itself was, like, how much of a patience did you have to develop for yourself in order to get through the game, in a sense?
Ooh, quite a lot. I can't figure out whether I'm an impatient or a patient person. I think I vary. I'm a stubborn person. That's what I am. I'm a stubborn person. Yeah. So the island is kind of built for you to give you like a little bit of space in between things, which was really important for me, and it's completely voluntary space as well. Like, it doesn't like shut off the panel and be like, you know what, you've had 80 goes at this. Have you thought about maybe walking away for a bit? It doesn't do that. You have to do that on your own, and I had to learn to do that, I think, and I had to learn to stop beating my head against certain things. So yeah, it was like patience, but like more wisdom, really. I had to learn to be wise and be like, you know what, like maybe this isn't the time where I solve this particular panel or get this particular laser, because I'm just not in the zone, or there's something I'm missing, and maybe I need to sort of like take a refresher on everything else. Yeah, so very patient, but one of the biggest end games of The Witness tested me in a way where I nearly broke. Like, and was that patience? Yeah, a little bit. It was stubbornness, and then I had to stop. But then it was kind of patience and being like, you know what, I will get this eventually. Basically, there's a challenge once you're a good number of hours into The Witness, and you're sort of way beyond the first ending, and you've kind of sorted out a whole bunch of other stuff. It's ingenious in that there is no way, even if you tried, to look up a solution to it, like a walkthrough. Moments silence for all the websites who couldn't make any traffic on that, because there's no way that you can look up a walkthrough for it. So you can probably guess kind of what it involved. It involves a degree of randomness, and it surely involves some insane like coding, like, to pull off. It's a 7-minute challenge. It's timed. It's set to 2 Edvard Grieg tracks, 2 classical tracks. The second and final one is In the Hall of the Mountain King. You know that one?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that song, like, legit gave me PTSD for a while, because it's probably one of the most stressful songs out there, and that will play at the end of the time challenge to sort of let you know you have a minute or so left to kind of complete this challenge. Hands shaking. Yeah, God, and I remember I spent a weekend beating my head against it, like a weekend of my own time. And that was it. Like on Sunday night, I had done umpteen attempts at this, umpteen trillion attempts at this bloody challenge, and I still hadn't done it. And I actually found myself getting teary, because I was like, I've just wasted my whole weekend looking at these succession of mazes, listening to In the Hall of the Mountain King, and what do I have to show for it? Nothing. And I was just like, fuck this game, I'm going away. I think I left the game for about 7 months. I did not go back. Like, it burnt me, like, really bad. And of course, 7 months later, I booted it up, and I think it was the second attempt. I did it. I got the platinum trophy, which is, again, is the Witness's final cruel lesson, is that sometimes you just need to give yourself a little bit of space and stop, like, beating your head against it. It's the same thing I do with Dark Souls bosses, and that, like, if I failed 50 times, I'm like, oh, I'll just keep going, when of course you shouldn't just keep going. So yeah, it taught me quite a bit of patience, probably, maybe, with wisdom.
It's taught you patience, but it's also taught you, like you said, it's also taught you wisdom. And so how have you used that wisdom towards other near similar difficult games like The Witness?
I'm trying to think of, like, other difficult games. Probably, like, was it Dark Souls 3 I would have been playing? When did that come out? Was that April?
That was April last year.
Yeah, and I played Dark Souls 3, and no, I didn't learn my lesson because because I was severely underleveled for one boss, and instead of going away and just grinding, I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And I just sat and drove myself crazy. So no, I don't think I did really learn my lesson. I think, sometimes I think maybe the way the Witness works has had an effect on me as a person, the way that I look at things. Just because it is a game about looking at things from a different angle, and it's a game about Zen as well. Like a lot of those diaries you find at the end, not at the end, but like the ones that are going towards the end when you're kind of in the mountain. Like I can say that, and it's like the first like lot of end puzzles basically for the whole rest of the game. So a lot of those diaries start talking about like the concept of Zen, and anyone who's played like maybe a like twin stick shooter or like a tough puzzle game or done a Sudoku like probably knows that like kind of idea of like such focus and like clarity that like there's just real like peace. Nothing else is really existing. Like mindfulness, right? I guess mindfulness. And The Witness is a difficult game for me because it's kind of like tied up in a part of my life that ended up being quite difficult last year. But it was interesting in that I somehow basically a friend was going through some really tough stuff, and it ended up sort of tangentially affecting me, probably more than tangentially. And having played that game and like finished it quite recently as well, like that's when I just sort of finished it and I was sort of back into it again. Poison was out, I'd done the bloody challenge, and I could sort of enjoy the rest of it and kind of the things it's saying and the lessons it has to teach, and sort of what it taught me about kind of looking at things a different way and not necessarily having like a reaction to something and going at it head on, and maybe going, okay, maybe this is the way to look at it, and this is the way that will actually make things settle down a bit more. Finishing it was like quite an important time in my life, because I felt I could apply that skill of looking at a situation in a different way, and in a more grown-up way, really, and being like, okay, well, that's not necessarily all that it appears, right? When someone's going through something and they might appear one way, but you know that they're another way. And that was something I was able to pass on to them. And they saw it too, and they were like, okay, no, I get it. You're right, I've been looking at this in completely the wrong way, and this is what's actually going on. And I think that helped us both. And they'd actually played The Witness as well, like, so I don't know, maybe I'm drawing like weird lines there, but there was something about we were able to sort of like step back and take a look at it from another way, and it ended up really helping them. And now they've kind of like got their shit together, and that was a really tough time, and we're not really in contact anymore. But it was weird how those sort of things coalesced, right? And something that was quite a stressful situation, I managed to actually be quite measured about. So maybe not at the games, but like I felt like at that moment in my life, I kind of felt like the influence of sort of like the stuff it teaches you and talks about, that kind of like Zen and Buddhism and things like that. It does touch on those sort of things in the game.
Like you're applying the wisdom you've learned from The Witness, less from into any other games, but more into real life situations in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's a game that has a lot to say about noticing things in the present sort of without judgment. Just noticing what's around you, right? And then suddenly, once you notice it, like a whole other set of patterns becomes clear, and that's exactly what was going on in my relationship with my friend right there. So yeah, like, I don't know, maybe it's a stretch, but like when I finished that game and when I was playing that game, when kind of that situation kicked off, it all kind of coalesced in a way, and we ended up like getting out of it in pretty good shape. So yeah, well done, The Witness, I guess.
Probably helps as well, like that you helped apply that wisdom learned from The Witness with that kind of observant side of you as well.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like it was like a lens for just look at things. Like, I feel like we all fall into this habit, right, of like not looking at what's around us, like, quite a lot of the time. Like, I know I'm definitely guilty of this, and
Me too.
yeah, and often you need reminders, right, where it's like, you know what, maybe you're missing something that could like dramatically like alter the situation you're in, like, because the clue is right there in front of you. You're just maybe not looking at it the right way because your head's in a certain space, or your eyes aren't lined up with it correctly. Like, that's what The Witness is. But there's so many like different lessons that you can sort of take from that. Yeah, and it's a game that like knowingly touches on those sort of things, and knowingly touches on like noticing things and secrets, like really the end game, which is beautiful and worth all the struggle and the challenge. And it's the end game basically is one of the videos. There's a lot of hidden video collectibles, and a lot of them are a bit mad, but they do kind of make sense, but they're very abstract. But the end game is one of the videos, and then there's something else you have to do, and then it's actually a lecture. Don't you love The Witness? It's not a boring game at all. And it's a lecture about sort of the magic of hidden things and secrets, and that amazing thing when you notice something and you get that shiver and you're like, oh my god, and you know that that's how it's supposed to be lined up. Yeah, it's a good game for that. It's not just mazes.
You kind of actually mentioned something in part in just there a minute ago, but you also mentioned it before we started recording. And when you mentioned how you weren't a puzzle gamer, that every time The Witness was kicking your ass, in a sense, it was a game where you beat your head up against the wall, stuff like that there, but it's also kind of zen-like feeling, like not many games get to do that.
Yeah, it's sort of magic and sort of torture, because it's like emotional whiplash, right? But of course it's all to do with the state you're in that day. Like, if you go in sort of in a certain state, you tend to have a more zen time with it, I've found. But if you go in looking for a challenge, like, that's exactly what you'll get, and you'll get it putting the middle finger up at you. But if you go in with a more zen approach, like, often you'll have a very different experience with the game. But it is funny, yeah, because we were just saying like how one of my other favourite games is Super Meat Boy, which is incredibly tough, and I love it because of that. And then my other one would be like just the Animal Crossing series in general, but like Animal Crossing New Leaf in particular, I guess, but which is the total opposite in that it's so laid back that it's like horizontal, right? Like, it doesn't ask you to do anything. Like, it's like, you just chill out, man, go fishing, do whatever you want, there's no rush. And The Witness has both sides of that, yeah, so that might explain why I'm so obsessed with it. Yeah, it scratches both those itches, I guess.
So The Witness is something of, at least to me, is a kind of special case in a way, because it has the concept of an open world puzzle game. Like, you have games that are set in an open world that have puzzles, but never a game that's set in an open world just based on puzzles. That's kind of a rarity. Not even a rarity. It's an anomaly in a sense.
Right. It's not linear, right? Like oh, you have to go here and do this, like a mist sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it makes it so much better for it, like as a puzzle game. Because on a normal puzzle game, right, you like I've been saying, you get stuck and you're just stuck. Like you have to look at a walkthrough or like just walk away from the entire game. Whereas in The Witness, you can get that space in the game itself. You don't have to stop playing the game. You just go, oh, okay. Like I can leave a panel at any time I like just by pressing the back button, basically, on my pad or whatever, and like just go hang out in a different section of the island or do something completely different that's not maze puzzles. There are different things to do and look at and find and piece together. So yeah, just sort of the sheer variety and how flexible it is. That's the thing. It's an incredibly patient game. Like as I was saying, it's just quiet and it just lets you get on with it, however fast that might be. And the open world structure is like completely key to that. It would be a completely different game if it was linear. It can also impede you as well because like quite often you'll come across like a part of the island upon a first playthrough and you'll be like, oh well, I've done like I do all these puzzles, yeah, and then you get to a place and you're like, what the hell does this like weird little 3-pronged triangle like thing mean? Like I don't understand this symbol. And then you kind of just have to walk away because it turns out there's somewhere else in the completely open world that you haven't seen yet that will teach you the key to that. But the visual design of it is so important because like each area is so differently and vividly coloured. It's why you don't need a mini map or anything, right? Because you just go, okay, haven't been to like this weird jungle thing yet. Maybe the thing I need to know is like in here. So you just sort of go towards that. It's quite a small island. You're on foot mostly, but there is a boat that goes around the perimeter. That is like quite useful for getting to different areas. And there's I tell a lie. There's actually a little map on the boat, and it does tell you which symbols are at which areas. So it can impede you, but I feel like it mostly helps you. And if you're kind of getting into the atmosphere of the game, you don't rage when you find something that you don't understand yet. You just go, okay, I don't understand that yet. I need to go somewhere else. It's something that's completely not possible in a linear game, and it's so much more welcoming than just, I don't know, any other puzzle game where if you're stuck, you're stuck. And I think that's a big part of why, if you're like determined enough and to enjoy it to its fullest, then like you really don't have to look at a walkthrough, because if you are stuck, you can go somewhere else and probably not be stuck, and then come back and you'll probably be unstuck. Quite good.
I can't remember if this was before we started or whilst you said that. Well, whilst you said this, but whilst we've been recording, but like you mentioned as well that The Witness is sort of Nintendo-like. Like, what did you mean by that in terms of its charm, gameplay design?
Oh, definitely not its charm. Charm is a big word. Yeah. Loads of people just look at The Witness and they're like, God, it can feel and seem like deliberately like mean at times, and like blank and impassive and like uncaring. There's no like happy little mustachioed plumber to like be like, oh, you did it. None of that. Like you just get like a slightly different sound effect on your panel, and the next one comes up, and that's all the reward you get, I'm afraid. Like, so yeah, it's not family friendly. Maybe like, well, it's not out to make friends. It's out to make scholars of you and reveal cool stuff if you're as excited about it as it is about what it's saying. But the way in which it teaches stuff, basically, right, is very Nintendo, in that Nintendo are great for like show but not necessarily tell. They'll put something next to something else and be like, and The Witness is a lot of that, where like one panel go, okay, well, there's a tree branch here, and oh yeah, look, if you draw around this tree branch, that does something. Oh, interesting. and then you move on to the next one, and you're like, oh, okay, now there's 2 tree branches. You move on to the next one, and you're like, oh, now there's like shadows in a different place, and then you move on to the next one, and it might like invert that. So it's these incremental kind of like baby steps, right? Like and almost like Nintendo games that are created for like young audiences, and it's like you can see the steps that get you there, like baby steps, and that's exactly what The Witness does and has to do, because it can't do anything else. It has to be very slow and patient, and the world's most patient teacher, right? But it teaches everything meticulously. I think there's maybe only 2 panels, and there's like hundreds of panels in the game. I think there are maybe only 2 panels where I was like pure chance solved them, because I was like, I have no idea what the step is and what you're asking of me here. But it's all meticulously thought out, right? Just a really great teacher, and I think like Nintendo are probably one of the best in the business at doing that, and that rule of communicating with a player like so clearly and step by step, and yeah, built around that. That's kind of what I meant, I think.
Like what? I mean, this may be a kind of stupid question to ask, considering it feels like more of a general philosophy for Nintendo. But like, what recent games like do you think Nintendo have done this show not tell thing that you've kind of mentioned with The Witness? Like, there is, to be honest, at least with their 2 biggest games this year, at least of recording this, they've certainly done that with. But the biggest one that stands out for me is Breath of the Wild, actually.
Do you know what? I was just going to say Super Mario Odyssey as well. It's like, again, these 2 10 out of 10 games, right? Like, we could say that, right? Yeah.
yeah.
But games that don't go, oh, like, check it out. There's like a chest in a block of ice here. And Navi's like, hey, listen, have you tried, like, holding a torch next to the ice so you can get the thing? Like, no, it doesn't do that. It just does that, and it like puts these unlikely scenarios in. The Korok seeds, right? Like, that's the thing where it's like, oh, okay, this is a weird collection of flowers in a specific shape, or like, this is a strange little outcropping, I wonder if there's anything here. And Odyssey does it as well with the moons, where I don't know, there's some like NPCs that are like, hey, have you tried ground pounding on bumps? Because there might be moons there. But I think for the most part, there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, well, if I ground pound on this staircase and the other end of the staircase comes up, then maybe there'll be something underneath the staircase. And there is something underneath the staircase. But it just guesses or designs according to what is the next like logical step in your mind, and that's exactly what The Witness does. And I can't even begin to think how you would do that. I wonder if it's like play testing or something, like a lot of play testing. I actually don't know how much The Witness was play tested or not. I assume a lot, but just understanding human behavior, right? Have you ever heard this the anecdote about Miyamoto's sob stories?
No, I have not. No.
See, that's something that it's quite. I don't know whether it was like something in Games Master recently, or like last year or something. But we always have a little chuckle about it in the office. There's an interview that with a developer who worked for Miyamoto. I don't recall the name, but he was like, oh, Miyamoto comes to us with little sob stories after he's played our games, and he goes, oh, when I tried to talk to this like person in the village, and they didn't talk back to me, and it made me really sad. And so he plays these games and he sends this all to them, and then they go, oh, okay, and then they try and put that in. So like, yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like almost this process of trying to anticipate the player's sob stories. Like, oh, I looked here and I was hoping there would be something there, but there wasn't. And yeah, the beauty, I think, of like Breath of the Wild and Odyssey and The Witness is like often you try something and you're like, oh, I wonder if this will work, and it does. And that's just brilliant design. Don't know how they do it.
That kind of aha moment in figuring out puzzles.
And they're just seeded everywhere, like happy little things, and it's totally, you totally think you're the most genius person on earth to have thought of it, when really you're being led there the whole time by like a series of little sort of design clues, It's really cool.
So, like, when The Witness came out, like, I know you and Pellet were, like, two of the most obsessed people over the
Oh,
game.
yes.
Like, it's true. Like, if you'd ever seen both their Twitters, it would have been just all about The Witness. And in fact, there was a few other people who were trying to solve puzzles using pen and paper. And
Yes.
the only game I can recall that ever been done besides The Witness is Fez.
Yes.
And like that's a real something really telling of a game that it's actually making you think outside the game, that it's actually making you like jot down like potential solutions to these puzzles, even if they're wrong. Like, it's strong enough to get you to say, okay, they get you to write down one solution, you try it, nope, write down another solution, try that, nope, try another solution, nope, keep going, writing down solutions until you find the right one and go, aha, that's the one.
And then you put it in and it doesn't work. That's what happened all the time with me for The Witness. I'd be like, I've done it, and I'd have a pen and paper out. I actually like did it a lot in the like notes thing on my iPad, I think, for one particular puzzle. And you think you have it worked out, and you've done it on the paper, and you're like, yes, and then you put it on the screen. It's like, nope. I'm like, fuck this game. Oh, nightmare. But yeah, Fez was another one. Like, I played Fez and I loved Fez. Probably to no one's surprise if I, loved The Witness. It's a very similar game in that sense. The other game that actually made me do that in a different way, and I wonder whether it's the same with you, was Her Story. You ever play Her
Yeah,
Story?
yeah.
Yeah?
No, I've played Her Story, but I never like kind of wrote down ideas. Like, I wrote down keywords
Yes. No,
on.
that's exactly what I mean. I had a notebook and I would just manically scribble down just like single words from every single clip and then just try them all. It was so exciting to me.
It's fascinating when games get you to think outside the box in that kind of way. Like with The Witness, with Fez, with Her Story. I feel like I'm repeating myself here saying this, but it is honestly a sort of magical feeling in a way that games can do that to you in that sense.
Yeah, I always love when they sort of like break the fourth wall a bit, don't you? Like, have you played
That's
Undertale like at all?
I've not played Undertale.
Ooh.
I should. I know I
Yeah.
should though.
I won't spoil it, but like it's another one of those games that at least makes you believe that it has an effect on things outside of the game, and you're like, what? And that's always really exciting when you think you kind of feel like you've been tricked. I believe I've never played it, but I think Superhot does something similar, right?
I have played Super Hot, yes, but
Isn't it like part of a computer screen or something? It does something
yeah,
like that.
it's like a VR game.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that sort of stuff where it sort of like reaches out of those confines. I like the Witness never gets. I don't know. It does like get in your head in that sort of way, and a lot of the themes of the game kind of extend outside of this little island. And actually, one of the endings, does get quite weird in that respect. Funnily enough, I forgot about that. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny how it can sort of like blend those lines. Like I was saying with the panels and the environment around it, I feel like that's almost kind of a commentary on that, in the way that kind of our obsession with these shapes and puzzles like can often like bleed out and be like replicated in the world, and then you start thinking in patterns and you're like, oh, that looks like that. Like, honestly, me and I know a bunch of other people who play The Witness, like, if you had a long session with that game and then you like just get up and you go and look around, like you start seeing mazes in everything, and it's really weird. Like, you're like look at the like towel rack on the wall and like be lining it up with the shower door or something and just be like, trying to solve this maze. It's kind of mad. Yeah, it kind of weirdly does have an effect on your brain, that, and the game makes a big commentary on that itself, which is just one of the pieces of magic about it. yeah, it is weirdly like self-referential and meta in a lot of ways, but does it
L-
very elegantly.
like literally breaking the fourth wall.
Mhm, mhm.
And like you mentioned just then, like seeing different puzzles and colors out in the world. That CBT group did you wonders for the game.
Really did, didn't it? It's like, notice these patterns. Good gosh, absolutely crazy.
Just imagine where you would have been with The Witness if you hadn't done that CBT therapy.
I'd still be back on at like layer 1. Like, I love mazes. I love mazes.
Um, it's something that you kind of touched upon just then, but like The Witness has this kind of philosophy in a way with the lessons it teaches you, like human lessons. And we mentioned it in part there a few months ago, but like it's I'm trying to think of the right word for this, or even something to kind of turn this into a question. But the fact that it kind of gives you that kind of philosophy on life, in a sense, is sort of fascinating. Not necessarily in a way that makes you think like maybe obvious things when you think of philosophy, like let's say for example religion or even maybe politics, but like something outside the norm in a sense. Like would that be right in a way?
Yeah, definitely, and it even like it touches a lot on the themes of sort of religion, science, and art, and like really big, lofty themes. But also, it also does a great job of being like, there's all these big things, but then ultimately, like the world is very, very small, and often the answer is very small, and personal. And I mean, I've just bought it actually because I really want to play it. But like David O'Reilly's Everything, and that's a game that's about kind of how giant the universe is, but also like how small it is because of the way it's connected to everything. And the witness comes very near to that sort of thing a lot of the time. It's just a game of like immense scope, and also like a strange simplicity as well. And that's why like almost anyone can play it and get some really interesting things out of it. But yeah, it certainly extends outside of itself. I think if you play it enough, and if you lean into these messages enough and stuff like that, I think you really start to see the impact of a lot of it on your life. And again, it kind of comes back to that thing of, it's very easy to equate it to literature because, I don't know, you read a book and a lot of the broader things it has to say, you take them away, right? And you might think about them in reference to your own life. And I don't know, it's hard to think about games that do that a lot. I think most recently it was probably like Edith Finch that did that for me.
Yes,
With the idea of death, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And how it almost, it's about celebration. It wasn't like morbid or melancholic. Well, it kind of was a little bit.
Yeah, it was melancholy. Like certainly aspects of Edith Finch were certainly melancholy and sad. Like I like. I'm actually going to spoil slightly a part of Edith Finch here. So if you're listening, and you might want to plug your ears in now for the next 30 seconds or so, but like I can recall like I can't remember the name of the Finch exactly, but it was the guy in the fish factory, and you just think
Lewis.
He's doing this. Yeah, Lewis, that's it, and he's doing this sterile job, cutting up fish heads and all that there, and then you just think there's something more imaginative, or well, rather as it goes on, it gets more imaginative as of what he wants. Like it gets more fantasy-esque, and it's actually rather inclusive as well, which I really loved, at least as part of that story in terms of gender and even just partnerships and sexuality and all that there. I really loved that. But it gives off this vibe of have you ever seen 500 Days of Summer?
Yes.
And it gives off this whole feeling of reality and like what you really want, and what you're actually going to get.
Yeah, yeah.
Like especially at Summer's party, and so that's what that felt like for me playing through Lewis's portion in Edith Finch. Like, and then as it goes on, you realize this is not going to end well, is it? And I just. It's really hard for me to talk about in a sense, but it's really sort of I'm kind of struggling to find the right words for it, but like it's really powerful. I think that much you can definitely say about that portion of the game. Anyways,
I think again, like it's just that word, right? It's like human. Like I think most people can relate to sort of like being in that space where like reality is one thing and then how you view it is another, right?
Like reality and expectation.
Yeah, and like even the way you see yourself like in a different way or something. Like, was it the Summer's party thing? Is that how he thinks it came off? But then that was how it really came off, which wasn't good. And yeah, like I think that's a very human thing. And yeah, again, like The Witness is like sort of adjacent to those things in that it's like reality is one thing and then you look at it a different way and then it sort of becomes something quite different, or you know, the experience you have paints it in a different light. It's all about like seeing through different sets of eyes, right? And that's really interesting.
Like the expectation clouds your reality.
Definitely, and I think like if I hadn't gone into The Witness with such an open mind and a curious mind and looking for secrets, and if I'd gone into The Witness going, oh, guess I'll give this puzzle game a go. Oh god, that's a lot of fucking mazes, isn't it? Oh yeah, loads of mazes. Oh yeah, great. Oh, some more mazes. Why am I playing this? And I think if you went into The Witness with that expectation, that would be your reality. So yeah, it very much depends on the mindset that you're in, like what you get out of it. Which is quite interesting and like quite elegant and quite brave and like possibly a bit stupid, because it's like, you know, like who's gonna see half of this, because it requires such a mental adjustment, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite impressive, and to be honest, if anyone's going to do it, Jonathan Blow is, because the man is precocious and and extraordinarily intelligent, and he will just decide to do these things and clearly thinks, okay, well, if you know, if 60% of people don't see this, I don't care, because the 40% that do it will be so much more special. And that's a difficult question about The Witness as well, because it's like, you know, I want everyone who possibly can to experience this game and enjoy this game in the way that I've enjoyed it, and have those wonderful epiphany moments and like changes of perspective that drastically alter things, and think about how that might work in their lives. But the reality is not my expectation, that probably most people won't, which is very sad, very desperately sad. But yeah, you know, again, it's like secrets, you know, some things are special because not everyone sees them. So it's the trade-off.
No one has it all. You mentioned the 60-40 thing with Blow, and that has me thinking back to Nintendo again, in a sense, but rather with how they did innovation with hardware a decade ago, back when Iwata was in charge and still with us, and more their Blue Ocean design with the DS and the Wii. And when you mentioned the 60-40 thing with the Blow, like, and with how 60% may not play this game or may not enjoy it, but the 40% who do play it, it'll feel a lot more special. It made me think of the Blue Ocean aspect of Nintendo, in a sense, that this was maybe... I'm trying to find the right words to at least turn this into a question, but it felt like in a way that sort of Nintendo-esque thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, again, it is hard to turn into a question. Maybe you could just answer it from there. But like, basically,
I'll try.
but basically, it's more than just the show and for me, at least, we've been talking about it now for nearly an hour and a half. But basically, when we think about when you've been talking about how it's sort of Nintendo like, maybe it's not just the show not tell aspect of it, but rather its uniqueness. It's kind of blue ocean side to it.
Yeah. Like you're spot on, I think, in that idea of it's gone to fill out, all that uncontested space. Because I think Blow is a person who very much thinks that video games should aim so much higher than what a lot of video games do, and I think sometimes it can probably come across quite like elitist, to but I don't think that's the case. I think there is so much unexplored space, and The Witness goes so far into exploring that sort of thing. Like it's so massive in scope and ambition, and it pulls it all off so like incredibly well. But I like personally, I do believe and actually have a theory, like about why The Witness was made, and I think it had a lot to do with there was a need, for something different, something incredible, and Jonathan Blow went, "I'm going to make it." There's something in the game. There's something in the very, very, very end game that I think points towards why The Witness was made. And if anyone manages to make it there, please do tweet me and we can have a conversation about it. But yeah, I think there was a reason The Witness was made, and I think it has a lot to do with the world and maybe even specific people were asking for this sort of game to be made, and what this game is a remarkable achievement. I think especially intellectually, which is quite difficult because it has the effect of like turning off a lot of people going, this is pretentious nonsense, and anyone who's talking about it is going over the top. And I'm an enthusiastic person, Johnny. I don't know if you've noticed that, but
really,
but I honestly believe that like the hyperbole for this game, the people who have really, really dug into it and given it those 10 out of 10s, and the sort of like really like low, I think, yeah, on the smaller side of like really passionate people about it, like completely have a reason. I think it's because it's, it's something truly magic. I think in a good number of years' time, it will go down in history, in games. I wouldn't be surprised. I hope enough people talk about it and play it. But yeah.
Like, when you say it'll go down in history, you mean like as in one of the greatest games ever?
Yes, I think so.
Like, objectively, not subjectively, like, you think consensus-wise one of the greatest games of all time?
Maybe. I think it depends on how much it's talked about and like probed into, and I don't see many people doing that at the moment. I've sometimes like considered like writing something like a bit more substantial on it, but yeah, I think as like a piece of art. I don't know. Like, it's more game than art, right? But like surely we're all out to try and make games art. Like, that's what everyone's doing. We're all trying to make games meaningful, right? And this is a game that's packed with meaning, and like beautifully done. Yeah. To me, it's incredibly significant. Whether its impact has been significant, yeah, I don't know. That's a different question. Yeah, and of course there's like this paradox, right, at the heart of it, because talking about it and dissecting it and going into it and having people maybe read books about this game, maybe before even playing it, like robs that game of everything it's about, which is about discovering things for the first time. So yeah, we'll see. But like, for me, it's the most astounding game I've ever played. What it manages to pull off.
You mentioned it just a second ago in terms of how people like, of how the how everyone was giving it the 10 out of 10s and
Mm.
high scores and all that there. But at the same time, there was a few outlets that weren't quite as...
Oh, totally. Like outlets in the same office as us as well, who like just really, really didn't get on with it, which I think is like totally fine.
Yeah.
And again, it's difficult because it definitely could be said to be a failure of the game, but I don't think it is because I think it is made for that 60%, right? Like not 60%, 40%,
The 40%,
40%, but probably less really. I think it is like knowingly made for the the explorers, the intrepid, the bulldog stubborn, the patient, um, and people come in various flavors, right? But I think it's certainly not made for like the baseline kind of person who wants to enjoy video games in a certain way, kind of like very unconcerned and things. It's a real task at times. Like sometimes it can be very relaxing and stuff, but sometimes it like really requires a lot of determination, like in different areas for different people. And I think like understandably a lot of people bounced off it like very hard. I honestly expected to bounce off it. And really I only kept going is because I knew that there were secrets, and it was because I knew that there was stuff on the island that I still hadn't figured out. Why is that cloud black and all the rest of them aren't? And I knew that other people were playing it and had experienced lots of different things as well. So there was kind of two avenues of I knew there was more to it being communicated to me by the game and by other people as well.
That kind of curious, nosy nature.
And that black cloud, I think probably took me like over 20 hours to sort of figure out. Like obviously not thinking about what it could have to do with, but like I figured out that weirdly I figured out that like a laser could change the color of it from black to white, and I was like, that's weird, and I don't understand. And then and then like 20 hours later it was kind of just like this divine intervention moment when I was crossing a certain way, and I managed to look over, and really it again, like everything in The Witness, just required a new perspective on it. And I was like, I knew it! And I came into work and I was like, I knew there was something about that damn cloud! I knew it was to do with something. And like that was like maybe my like favourite gaming moment of the year in that year. What was it, 2016? Yeah, last year. I like because I was like, I knew that cloud had to do with something. It was so satisfying.
In that regard, going back slightly, like in terms of that kind of critical aspect of the game, and taking a critical look at the game, like it's certainly The Witness is certainly an acquired taste for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's something that, like, you're hardly going to see any Call of Duty, Halo, FIFA Pro players going near it. But
I'd hope so. I'd hope they'd give it a chance. Like, don't know.
come on.
Even they must like a Sudoku now and then, so maybe they could sit down with The Witness and have their mind blown unexpectedly.
Basically, I don't expect a stereotypical gamer to go near it. I really
Okay,
don't.
that's a fair assessment.
A kind of mean assessment, but it's an assessment.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's not made for instant,
Again,
instant
it's
gratification, and so many
no.
games nowadays are, and like that's good, that's cool, that makes us feel great, but like you know what it's like when you've worked on something for a really long time, or you've come at something from a few different angles and you've really tried to figure it out, and you kind of feel like more personally connected to it, right? Than if you just like shoot someone real quick and a badge pops up like for nothing, So that's what The Witness is about. Is that the payoff is so much more meaningful. But like, of course, I like want to go and like just shoot the shit sometimes and be
sure.
immediately rewarded for stuff, and you get that quick little like dopamine hit, right? Like, but there's kind of like it's different options, but yeah, I think we're also addicted to having it so quickly and at such a low level, like that feedback, right? That when you're plonked into a game that maybe doesn't give you any positive feedback for hours, like it can feel quite unfriendly and unwelcoming. So yeah, I don't think it would appeal to a lot of people who are definitely tied into that loop of I'm only going to play the game that tells me I'm getting it right every 30 seconds, you know.
Yeah, you're just constantly in need of that
Mm.
immediate gratification. Just
Mm.
no patience for waiting such a long time for it.
Yeah, I'm so bad at that on a daily level. Like I just, you know, it's like everything is like social media, and you just want the new shit and the next shit, and you want to move on and move on and move on really quickly, and you know, and I love shooters for that reason and stuff, and all that. But the Witness is something completely different to that, something completely different to that, and it can be a real struggle and a real test, and yeah, again, it goes back to that like mindfulness thing, you know, of um, like really having to be present with it.
It's weird that you mentioned social media in terms of that instant, immediate gratification thing that you strive for, and it makes me think Charlie Brooker was fucking right to put Twitter at the top of that games list he did for the Channel 4 documentary.
Oh
Now
yeah, Twitter is the ultimate game, man. Hell yeah.
everything makes sense in hindsight now.
Oh yeah, now we got numbers in real time, boy. What do you think they were doing? You wait like for achievements. I mean, you've got those bots, haven't you? That are like, congrats on your 250 fave tweet. So there's kind of achievements.
Hmm.
Kind of is.
And now Twitter has gone from instant gratification to a place full of racists and Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, he was gone for 5 glorious minutes, wasn't he?
10 glorious
I
minutes.
think I missed it. I think I was playing Overwatch.
Where were you when Donald Trump was off Twitter for 10
I
minutes?
was, mate, I was on Temple of Anubis, wrecking shit.
Oh, just imagine world peace for 10 minutes when Donald Trump was off Twitter. So what else do you like about The Witness that we've not talked about tonight?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Sometimes I look back at those bad moments with it, like the weekend I fingers quote marks wasted with it, you know, and the times where it just made me feel really dumb because I wasn't going anywhere fast, but that was me making myself feel dumb, you know. And sometimes I look back on those and I'm like, do I like The Witness? Sometimes I do. But I think the best way to put it is I am in awe of it. And I don't know. I don't think any other game has done that to me to quite that extent, and I am so grateful and happy to have had that experience and to have sort of been able to play through that. And I'm so glad that Jonathan Blow took 7 years to make this game, because like, to me, all that time was worth it. And kind of the narrative that I entered playing it, you know, yeah, when you're playing a game, right, or reading a book, like, you kind of feel like it's being made for you in a way. And when you have those moments, especially in games, when you have those moments, you're like, oh, you know, you're the hero in this, and you're the one making things happen. It kind of feels like your little world, right? And I feel like the series of moments of awe and wonder that were set up for me to discover, I will always be so grateful for that experience. Like, I loved it. I had such a blast. Like, even when I wasn't having a blast, like, it made the payoff like so much sweeter. Um, it's incredibly smart. It's really funny at times. Like I said, like, it'll even tell jokes. I know a lot about it, but I there's still stuff I don't know about it. It's just interesting, man. You know, like, so many things get boring quickly.
That comes back to the kind of patience thing as well.
Right. I feel like The Witness will never be boring to me, and I think I'll go back to it again and again and just enjoy it. And I'll never have that. It'll never have that full blow me away effect of all those of all those epiphanies again. I wish it could. There's that thing flying around Twitter at the moment. It's like, which game do you wish you could experience for the first time again? It is obviously The Witness, because that whole game is about that first experience, that first moment where you see something completely differently. I'm just really happy to have had it as kind of like an experience. It's felt like an experience more than a game, which all sounds really wanky. That's the thing about The Witness. And you talk about it and you just sound like a douche. But yeah, I will have just, yeah, in my heart, I love it. I think it's great.
That when you mentioned that kind of black clouds, but when you had to leave the game
Oh,
for 7 months, it makes me think that's the ultimate aha moment.
yeah. God, yeah. That was the challenge where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Fuck this. It was like the ultimate dark realization. I was like, I can't do this game. I've come so far, and in the end, it didn't even matter. I did it. But I went back 7 months later, and I was like, and I just did it. I don't know. It like that weirdly was one of the least. It wasn't like enjoyable. It was like this weird sense of relief. Just like, oh god, I did it. I didn't scream or like punch the air or cry or anything. Like one of the hardest challenges I've ever done, really, in gaming. Like if not the hardest. And I kind of just did it, and it was kind of this idea, this this new realization of course I would do it. All I needed to do was just walk away. Yeah, I'd made my peace with that game a long time ago, and then it was nice to just go back and get closure and do the challenge and get the platinum trophy. But yeah, what a weird game, man. It's unlike anything else. It's completely unique. It's so cool.
I'm just going to say up front, thank you for having Linkin Park stuck in my head now.
Yeah, that'll be there all night. Banger.
Yeah, although to be fair, I shouldn't complain that much.
It's a banger,
probably,
mate.
it is. What didn't you like about The Witness? I'm guessing there's definitely quite a few things.
Just the pain, just the endless pain. Yeah, I think
the endless mental torment.
Yeah, basically, I think just the way it played on my own insecurities, because I just don't see myself as someone who's very good at like logic or maths. So in the moments where I wasn't getting stuff right instantly, I was like, oh, maybe I'm really dumb. This doesn't feel good. But then of course, like you work it out, and it's a game designed to help you work it out, and it kind of believes that everyone has that ability to do that. So there was that, and I'm trying to think. Oh, there's a couple bits. So the main challenge, I think it's genius in that you can't cheat, but also it's cruel. I have mixed feelings about that. I can't say if I like it or I don't like it. But there's one specific set of puzzles in the mountain, which is like the first, when you get 7 lasers, you unlock the mountain, and there's puzzles that go down, and then it leads you to the end, basically. And that's the first end. And I didn't like, there was a set of panels in there that was just like actual bullshit, and I think is pretty like universally agreed to be kind of bullshit. They just like start flipping the panels around and putting them in mad colours, and it's just like distraction and like making you feel weird and nauseous more than anything. So that sucked. And yeah, I think everything else I'm like pretty okay with.
Fair enough. Besides the fact that it did give you that mental torment.
Hey, it was, I'm mentally fortified now. It's the thing. It's funny because I never believed I was any good at maths or logic puzzles growing up, and I think it's a lot to do with when you're a girl in school, or at least when I was like 13 or one, just in school, secondary school. You're kind of assumed to not be good at maths. So if you're struggling, you're kind of left, I think, because there is this inherent bias that like, okay, the boys are good at maths and the girls are good at English. And I think I could have been good at maths, but I think I gave up really quickly because I wasn't naturally good at it. And so like, and everyone, and they were just like, okay, whatever, we're just going to focus on the very naturally gifted like people over here. But that's a roundabout way of saying that I think the Witness, like, again, has that like sort of silent trust in the player that they can do it, and you kind of grow to understand very quickly that it's giving you the steps to be able to do it. And so that silence turns from something that's quite intimidating and creepy to something that's quite comforting and like understanding. Like it's weird how you kind of end up imbuing meaning with that, but it's a very like patient way of sort of, it was a game that sort of trusted me that maybe I was good at logic, puzzles, and maths. And I think that was a really nice thing to experience for me.
When do you think was the moment that you played The Witness that you realised it was your favourite game? I'm guessing not the Wasted Weekend.
No. That's a whole game about moments, right? About moments where you go, wow, this is amazing, which is why it's such a great and addictive and like game. And I look back at it and I'm like, wow, I had that moment with the cloud. It's torn between two. There's a moment where when you finish the first dungeon, you get taken back to the beginning. And I got taken back to the beginning, and I was like, that was like weird and
what the fuck,
and stupid, the mode of transport in which I came back here, and also it's bullshit, and has it just erased all my puzzles and I've got to start again, and like also it's like kind of hipster, like, ooh, take you back to the very beginning, and then because I'd done that first playthrough and I knew something, I was like, okay, well, there's a reason for everything in The Witness. There is a reason for everything, and there is. That's why it's so incredible. It's just they've thought of everything. And I was like, so why am I really back here at the beginning? And then I found out why I was back there at the beginning by observing with my new eyes that I'd gained through the playthrough. And I saw the bigger picture, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. And I think that was the moment when I grasped the main core of it, which was the knowledge is power thing, where if you know this, then suddenly the world looks very different. And when I first came out of like the opening tunnel, basically, to The Witness, and saw the island, I just saw a thing covered in maze panels. And then the second time I was back at the beginning of that tunnel, I could see the things in the world that had always been there, but now I saw them. In fact, I actually remember sending Matt Pellet a message saying, "What was this thing always here at the start?" And he was like, yep, you just see it now. And I think that blew my mind. But the other half is the lecture that you hear after you get kind of like the final video, and you've kind of sort of reached endgame basically by that point. And what happens in that video, that video lecture, that was amazing. And the lecture itself as well, because it sort of confirmed everything that I had been thinking about that game, and it was kind of almost kind of felt like a message from the people who'd made that game, being like, yes, this is what our game is about, and isn't it awesome? So yeah, probably mixed between those two.
Yes, honorable mentions. Go for it.
Super Meat Boy, which was probably one of the reasons that I got into writing about games, because it was for me just like one of the purest examples of just great game design, great mechanical design. Again, like The Witness, teaching you without explicitly like telling you what to do. So like, kind of like the opening world, the forest is just an incredible feat of design, and sort of like wordlessly kind of like puts walls there, so you figure out you can do wall jumps, and then you like figure you can slide, and there's one level with a huge gap and you realise that a regular jump isn't going to cut it, so if you try holding down the sprint and then you jump, you do a longer one. And it's this whole, again, this incremental baby step, build by build, where you kind of sort of learn everything Meat Boy can do. Obviously it's a super difficult Twitch platformer, all about sort of perfecting your movements, almost in this like horrible, hellish ballet with your thumbs. Incredible original Danny Baranowski score. The PS4 one's not very good. I think it's ridiculon, but it's not great. But they couldn't get the rights, I don't think, when they ported it. But yeah, Danny Baranowski soundtrack's amazing, and it's just frantic. It's incredible. It's the game that me and my two housemates in my second year of university like bonded over because we were all helping each other get through it, and kind of like screaming and swearing at each other, staying up until 5 a.m. The day before, like 9 a.m. lectures, playing it. And yeah, and I would play it in lectures as well, and that was a fun game of don't make rage noises when you die to a homing missile, when you're in a lecture about Chaucer.
So you're learning patience in that as well.
Yes, pretty much restraint.
And like that in itself has that kind of, let's say, Jen Simpkins' philosophy of mental bashing with Zen state as well.
yes, definitely. Yeah, and again, like intertwined with those Zen moments that you get in all Twitch games, where like suddenly for one glorious run, the pieces all come together and you just kind of go into this weird trance state and you just like do it on like pure muscle memory alone. And there's always that point in those sort of games where you've kind of run into a brick wall, sometimes literal, in the middle of the level, and you can't get past that bit. And then when you do, and it's like everything from then on is like completely improvisational, and you're completely reacting to like random buzzsaws flying at you and enemies and stuff like that. And like maybe if you're lucky and skilled and you've got the reactions, you'll make it on the first try, and that feels incredible as well. So yeah, that game's amazing. And I recently met Tommy Rufinas actually, for a work interview, and it was so cool to like meet the dude who helped make the game that basically just made such amazing memories for me at university with my friends. It's very much a game that I played kind of alongside friends. Yeah, and I've loved it ever since, and gone for all the tried to get all the like no death runs for each level, like so do the forest without dying, and I think I've done the forest, the hospital, and the salt factory, but that's it. But that took some significant trying, and lots of you can like play the levels in different orders to kind of give yourself the best shot at completing everything death free. So if you do the ones that you find easiest, if you save them for the end, then you don't waste so much time trying to get the no deaths. So yeah, love Super Meat Boy. It's great. Other honourable mention is probably Animal Crossing New Leaf, because I've played over 650 hours of it. Because I'm a psychopath.
I remember like tweeting you about this. It's like 630 hours. Are you fucking
50,
insane?
50, Johnny. 50 hours. Yeah, I love that game. I think that's across 2 villages. Obviously, it's like a little village simulator where you kind of generate and then build up and run and make beautiful and lovely your own little personal world. Basically, I think I had 2. I had one, and then I had one for a lot longer. And that game is so chilled out, and you can set all your own objectives. I think it's significant for me in that it helped me through a lot of really bad times at university. I had a really bad time. I got increasingly sort of anxious and depressed, like in each year of university. At the end of university, I was in a really bad way. And New Leaf was just the game that got me through it all. I remember going to I remember picking it up in was it 2014 it came out?
It was
Me and
2015. Yeah, yeah.
2015. Me and my best friend Jenny were like both excited for this game. We've been waiting years since it'd been announced, and we got it, and it kept me company, like, you know, through all those years of trying to be an adult at university and actually, like, you know, feeling the most vulnerable I'd ever felt. And I had this little world I could escape to on my 3DS, with all these like little animals that were always pleased to see me, and I could have, you know, complete control over everything. This beautiful little village, and I made it gorgeous, and made myself all these little objectives. Like, oh, I wanted to make, you know, I wanted to make an arcade in my house, and I was going to design all these cool patterns for the walls, and I wanted the upstairs to be like, you know, this like observatory in my house, and yeah, just like setting yourself little goals. I felt like that was a really healthy outlet for me, in that in a place where I felt like, I mean, but I certainly felt and was really hard on myself that I wasn't achieving much. Like, that was a game that I could go in and always achieve something because I was setting my own goals. It's a very like childlike game in a way that I was always like really imaginative, like growing up, and I would like play with like Polly Pockets and Barbies, and I would get magazines and cut out little figures and play dress up dolls with them and stuff, and I would make my own fun. And I feel like so much of Animal Crossing is like making your own fun, your own little sort of like game out of it. So yeah, that was like a massive comfort to me, and I think that is why I've put so many bloody hours of my life into that game, is because really it was a lifeline, and it's brilliantly done. That game, it's like the real culmination. I was obsessed with Wild World, and I played that for a lot of hours, but nowhere near as many as New Leaf.
Jesus Christ, $600. Jesus.
You okay?
I'm still just kind of having to baffle my head around this, get my head around this, and $600. Are you insane? Like, at most, I've only put in like 120 hours in the Grand Theft Auto 4, maybe a bit more, but like that.
Well, why you get on my level, Cullen?
That's across 2 platforms though. 650 hours. Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, you know, Johnny, I would have a house with like 8 rooms, and when I got bored of one room, I would be like, well, I'm gonna have to throw all this furniture out, and I'm gonna get all this new furniture and do that. And there's so much to do in that game. You've got like a little island. You go like beetle farming. I think like so many hours went into beetle farming, right? Because you could go to this little island that was kind of like almost like the island on the GameCube one, right? And you could go catch the beetles that sold for shitloads. And so, like, quite often I think I would do that while, like, watching TV or something, and because, like, I ended up just getting, like, so, like, Zen master at the game that I could almost do it without, like, watching. I would only need the audio cues and things like that. So, yeah, I think a lot of that was, like, kind of, like, weird, like, auto-idle time where I was just farming bells. Yeah, 650 hours, man. Don't play it anymore. I might go back. Waiting for Animal Crossing Switch.
Hey, like, Nintendo, hurry the fuck up,
Oh
please.
god, don't. Like, every day that Animal Crossing Switch is not in my life is just like a knife in the back. Oh.
Every Nintendo Direct, every E3 Direct, I'm just like...
I thought they might give us a little taste, you know, on that Pocket Camp thing, like on the end, like a Metroid Prime 4, you know, but...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, now everything from the Animal Crossing Direct from last year makes sense. Because, if you'll remember, they had a camp motif for it.
Oh, they did, didn't they?
And now everything makes sense.
They had, was it Harvey with his RV? No, actually, because that was the like downloadable content, right? Was it?
Yeah, that was the content for New Leaf.
He did have RVs, but then they do have camper vans in this one.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
So I think that was a hint of sort.
I reckon maybe we'll see, because you can like decorate the interior of your camper van in this little one and stuff. I reckon hopefully we'll see like fun little like extra decoratable that's not a word, I'm a writer. Like, spaces you are able to decorate, like in the Switch one, I think, like apart from your house, I think hopefully, maybe not vehicles, but like extra little houses or something, maybe like, I don't know, like a little holiday homes or something on the island or something, that might be quite cool.
Or maybe a small street, something like that there, like in the
Ooh, yeah.
suburbs.
Yeah, that would be nice. It'd be like when, City Folk on the Wii and they have like the actual city. It'd be cool if you could actually like choose which shops to build and stuff and sort of have a degree of customization on that, wouldn't it? Oh, but we dream. We dream, Johnny.
All but we dream, and we go forth with the power in our hearts and the prayer in our hearts that we know it should be coming, and that we also know
Oh.
not to fucking trust Tom Nook.
Oh no, no. I mean, there is the theory that, I mean, technically he does give you like free real estate and then like lets you pay him back in your own time and stuff, so maybe he's not that bad, but you are kind of vulnerable and he does kind of take advantage of you by going, hey, do you want a loan? Like, loans aren't great, are they?
No.
It's not like a mate's loan. I mean, there's no interest, I guess, so you can't be that parasitical.
Let's play that by ear, shall we?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's something not right about him. Do you see his little face when they mention the microtransactions in Pocket Camp on the Direct?
Like, have you seen the microtransaction animations?
Did you see that shit-eating grin on Tom Nook's face when they were like, "You can spend real money"?
Have you actually seen the animation for that microtransactions? He's literally bathing in fucking money.
He loves it. He's like popping a load of dollar bills into his like cereal bowl and just pouring a load of milk and he loves it. I think he eats coins. I think that's his dark secret, is he needs so many bells because that's actually his sustenance and he doesn't eat real food. That's it. Tom Nook exposed, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
That is Tom Nook has now been exposed exclusively by my favourite game as to having like
That's the scoops. That's the scoops, people.
Scoops. Like
only on my favourite games.
Like he's exposed as part of the new Paradise Papers that came out tonight.
Yeah. God, maybe they all eat money. Because what do they spend it on, Johnny? What are they buying? There's no shops for the NPCs, is there? It's just us.
No.
Right?
Oh, God.
Right? Mate, see, the witness has changed me. I'm seeing patterns. The numbers, Mason. The numbers, Mason. What do they mean?
Oh, sweet God.
I'm exposing the conspiracy.
The truth is out there. This is the part where I'll pull in the X-Files theme now. Let's move on from our Animal Crossing and Tom Nook conspiracy theories and why we may need Mulder and Scully to be on the case sooner than later. Any more honourable mentions? Like, there's at least one more I know that I want to talk with you about.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, both Johnny and I believe that The Last Guardian is an unquestionable 10 out of 10 game.
It is
and we will die for that opinion. I don't know, I'm speaking for you there. Will you die for that opinion,
No, that's more or less right.
I love The Last Guardian. Yeah, we were just having a little chat about this, weren't we? Because I think, yeah, as far as like just raw emotion of the crying kind, The Last Guardian has just had a crazy effect on me. I think it's that and an anime film called Your Name that I watched recently and that like completely destroyed me. But yeah, nothing else has made me cry quite as hard or love any little creature quite as hard as The Last Guardian. It is incredible what it does with building a relationship between you and this little Trico beast that you meet, and it is so lifelike and wonderful and convincing in the way it behaves, Trico, and the place you're in is so alien and scary and mysterious that by the time you reach the end of the game and what it does with the end of that game, you are just destroyed. I finished it at 1:30 in the morning, and I sat, I think, looking at a wall till about 2:30. And I just like woke up out of my like just sad, weird, strange. It's not even sad trance, and I was just like, oh, it felt like. I think it was like maybe took me 12 or 13 hours to play, and it felt like I'd had a little relationship with this animal. And it was so sad to leave that behind in that game. It was magical. It was magical. Wasn't it magical?
It was magical. And, like, I said this at the end of my favourite game of 2016 last year, and that, as hyperbole as it sounded, I've never felt such a lifelike and everlasting connection with a character in a game like Trico, because it is so lifelike. It felt like an achievement in character and AI design.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of companion stories. Like, not even just in companion stories, I think in characters in general. Like, when you think back of companion stories, like as of late, and as the past few years, you think of Ellie and Joel in The Last of Us, or Booker and Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite, or even just going further back from those a wee bit, you think of Gordon Freeman and Alex Vance in Half-Life, or at least the Half-Life 2 games. Speaking of which, Valve, we will never forgive you for not. We will never forgive you. We will never forgive you for not putting out episode 3, and we have our eternal and grateful and heartful thanks to Mark Laidlaw for basically spoiling the episode for us. Thank you for that. But in all seriousness, yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, there are certainly issues with that game.
Yes, big issues.
But at the same time, like, you can overlook those, or at least I did, anyways, because I'm trying to think of the right words here, but basically, this is going to sound very stupid, but like, it kind of, by showing itself as not immortal, in a sense, not
yeah,
immortal,
no, I know what you mean. Oh god, what is the word, Johnny?
by showing it that
it can
it's
make
not
mistakes. It's fallible. It's
yes,
fallible.
it's not perfect. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but showing that it's not perfect, it actually opens itself up more. It endears itself more to you, and that the fact is that I would rather have an imperfect game rather than an absolutely, entirely perfect game. No flaws, no bugs, no nothing. Because we're all human. We all make mistakes. We're not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection, even though it's right in front of us the entire time. And so, I would rather have games that are, while imperfect, they endear to you in such a way, and I think that's why The Last Guardian was not only my favourite game of last year, but it's actually, like, catapulted itself into my top 5 games ever. Like, the only, like, my top 4, like, I don't think nothing's going to top Zone of the Enders 2 anytime soon for 4th. But, god damn, like, I'll say this much. After I recorded my favourite game of 2016, a few days after it was my birthday, and I never got the collector's edition. A few days after we put out the episode, on my birthday, I managed to find a collector's edition, and I picked it up for my birthday, and I have the statue right in front of me. I'm looking at it right now to my left, and it's sitting on top of my PS4.
Dude, I totally bought it too. I pre-ordered it. I was like, I've been waiting for this game so long, and I was like, let's just see how it goes. Guess I can always trade it in, but yeah, nah, can't trade Trico, man.
No. You can never trade Trico and Trico.
No, he's a good boy. Such a good boy.
He's a good boy.
It's amazing. I think also, like, as amazing as Trico is, the way the narrative is kind of like doled out in little pieces in that game is really cleverly done. the kind of like world building in that at first you're not really sure what all these things are and what's happening, and I mean, something that you think is like quite video gamey and innocuous at first almost turns out to be quite a big deal at the end, i.e., the big vats of like nice smelling things that make Trico move around, right? At the end, you kind of realize where that's coming from, and even though it isn't ever explicitly said, it tells you something about kind of like that world and that mysterious like ruined place you're in. It's all very strange. Yeah, it's quite brilliant, like narrative wise, I think as well. And I was so glad it had that epilogue as well. I don't know. I think I was satisfied with the ending, and then the epilogue just put the crown on it for me. I was just like, that's exactly what I needed.
I was just like you. Like, I'd finished at 6 a.m. on a Friday morning. I was just bawling myself in tears, and I like you said this as well before we recorded, like how you were nearly in tears just trying to get Trico away because all the villagers were trying to stab at it, trying to kill it. It's like, no, leave him alone.
Yeah.
And you were so like everybody was so sure Trico was going to die before that game came out.
Yeah, everyone was like, "Oh, Bird Dog's gonna die, Jen." I was like, "Don't say that." Please
And
don't.
it's like, get out, don't die. Please, for the love of God, don't die.
That's yeah, that command of having to make you send him away at that point, like, broke me. But it was wonderfully done. I think Brothers does a similar sort of thing, doesn't it? But yeah, it was just like perfectly implemented. I think it was really nice, and very emotional. Very emotional indeed.
Yeah, like I was like I said, I was already in bed just going through that and the credits, and then the epilogue and the music.
Yeah,
and
that epilogue track is unbelievable.
It is just incredible. Like, I think it actually might be one of my favourite pieces of music from a game ever.
I listened to it again recently for the first time in a while, and I cried. It's how beautiful it is.
It is just, I'm now like in the position where I need more Ueda in my life, and I know there's the Shadow of the Colossus remake coming, but I need more Ueda now.
I wonder whether they'll ever make another game, though. I do wonder. Might be it. What do you think?
Like, I don't think he's made a studio just for a one-off, and that's it. I think he already has a few ideas in mind. Anyways, I think in a talk from Game Lab in Barcelona, he said he has one or two ideas going.
Okay.
I think for me the question is, how far out is it? Like, how far in production is he?
Yeah.
And more importantly, is it going to be multi-platform now that he's left Sony? That's the main thing for me.
I guess so. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he does next and whether he continues in that sort of Team Eco vein, in sort of that kind of like vibe, right? The journey, the companions, the melancholy, or whether he kind of switches to something ever so slightly different. I don't know. We will see. But like, I feel like that's very much like the trilogy, right? Like, complete, like what they've set out to do. But I'd be hugely interested to see what he does next. Like, I think it is wonderful.
It's interesting that you mentioned that it is a trilogy. I completely forgot the notion that it's not a direct trilogy, but like in terms of little nuggets down there, you feel like it is a trilogy. And then you mentioning that it is a trilogy, it completely made me think that it actually might be one of the greatest trilogies in gaming ever.
I guess so. It's like, how can you call something a trilogy though? It's difficult because I think there's a lot of like theories around like how the worlds are connected and things like that, and I think there are some nods. And obviously, like, I say trilogy because like Trico is obviously tri-eco, like the third eco game, and I wondered whether like that was a nod to that.
And like Shadow of the Colossus was originally codenamed Nico.
Exactly. So So it feels like that is the thing. But yeah, we'll see. Like, but they're not. They're linked by like a vibe, aren't they?
Yeah.
And a sort of, ooh, what would you say? Like an atmosphere, like a philosophy, like an aesthetic philosophy about and themes and sort of like certain aspects to it. Yeah.
Yeah, like philosophies and themes of stuff like, say, companionship and
Yeah.
love and
Yes.
friendship, really,
Yeah, and
and
long
adventure.
journeys. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm trying to maybe it actually could be one of the greatest trilogies in games, if not the greatest. I think the only other trilogy that would come close for me is Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, like, what a set of games! Like, I think in the same way you mentioned how in a few years maybe the Witness can be talked about as one of the greatest games of all time. I think Eco and Shadow especially, but I'd also hope Last Guardian as well can be fought off in that same regard. I mean, like, it's already happening with Eco, and certainly especially with Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
But even if you just consider it as one whole standalone trilogy, I mean, there's nothing that really comes close. I mean,
Yeah.
like there have been certainly attempts to come close, and I think one game that certainly comes close in terms of the Team Eco feel, in a sense, their ideologies, their themes and ideas, and it's actually something that one of the developers recently mentioned to me, and you'll know who this developer is Journey. Because I told you about this developer, and I can actually say who this developer is because she's been on the show. It's Robin Honeyke, and she kind of gave. I actually interviewed her recently again for those who need context. It's not my favorite game fan. But I'll stop talking because I'll get in trouble if I go any further. But,
Johnny, shh.
okay. But basically, like even with Journey, like there was always those Team Eco comparisons. Like I'd even made the Team Eco comparisons with Journey, and like in talking with Honeyke, like again, like a few months ago, it was something that even that game company aspired to with Journey. So I'm trying to think of. This feels like I'm repeating myself now for the sake of it, but it does feel like now, when you think of a certain subset of games, you think of a certain studio or a certain series. Like you think of the Dark Souls of games. Like you think of stuff like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or similar games to Dark Souls or Demon Souls. And whereas you think of Team Eco games, you think of stuff like Journey and Abzu and Edith. Maybe not Edith Finch, but not in terms of look, anyways. But certainly in terms of its ability to provoke feelings within you.
Yeah, I feel like funnily enough, actually, just to jump in, like Journey, like now you mention it, feels like almost it became a slight next step on from Team Eco games. I don't know, that's a big thing to say, but it feels like it condensed, like you say, that kind of same game philosophy about companionship and a journey and, exploration, and a mysterious world, and sort of took it to the next level, because obviously it's got that multiplayer aspect, that kind of drop in, drop out aspect, where the actual companionship was like another human, like it feels almost like the kind of most modern Team Eco game I can think of, which is, I mean, obviously why it's so bloody brilliant, but maybe that's something to do with it, and maybe why it resonated with both of us, like, and so many people as well, as like it really took that those ideas of kind of what it meant to have a relationship with somebody and made it even more real, and also just sort of condensed it down into like an incredibly tight couple of hours, right? Which, yeah, then it's like, how epic does it really feel? It's the thing, Team Eco games was much longer. I feel like The Last Guardian, if anything, is maybe slightly too long. Could have done with like a few hours being shaved off, I think. Whereas Journey is just tight from beginning to end, man. But I think still manages to feel epic. What do you think?
Like, I think for me, like, Journey, like, I agree with you in a sense that Journey does feel tight and concise from start to finish, and there are parts of The Last Guardian where you think, did that really need to be in there?
Oh yeah, bloody hell, yeah, definitely.
But I think because of The Last Guardian's epic sense, its epic scale in a way, I think that kind of gave it, like, it kind of made it a bit more of a powerful experience. Whereas with Journey, Journey's actually top 3, like, and of my favorite games. Like, I can honestly say that much there. And like you said, and I agree with you. It's tight from start to finish. It's concise. But for me, The Last Guardian, I think because there is, I don't know if Journey has the kind of same epic scale as The Last Guardian. I would say up until the final third of the game, it really kicks in.
Yeah. Oh, final third Journey, you mean, with the mountain?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I disagree. I feel like Journey manages. I think it does manage for me to still feel epic because it's so varied in such a small amount of time. With its things like that, like desert at the beginning that's like so massive, and then you've got like the snowy climb and stuff like that. There's tons of like really wide areas, really narrow areas, like all completely like visually different. That's not to say that like the Last Guardian setting isn't like pretty damn remarkable, because like it's almost like, oh god, I don't want to make the Dark Souls comparison, but I'm going to be that person. But it's one of those, like that whole area in, what's it called? Is it called the Nest? I think it's called the Nest.
Yes.
And it's like this huge winding thing that kind of doubles back on itself and goes up into dreaming spires and kind of comes down again. You've got to find all these weird paths that you double back on yourself through all these like ruined bits of it, right? Which is pretty amazing. But there were definitely moments around, I think it was like hour 9 or 10 of puzzles where I was like, this is going on too long, and I'm starting to get very tired. And it, like all of it, you know, the world all looks, it's one continuous space, right? One huge space. I think you're right in that it does feel like a huge, crazy, ruined castle or whatever it is. But I think they're both epic, but in different ways, and I think Journey manages to do it in a lot less time, which I can respect. Like it's always good when you have respect for the player's time, and I feel like there were moments in kind of like the second, towards the end of the second act of the Last Guardian, I was like, I'm starting to get very very frustrated and starting to hope for the end now, because I know the end's going to be amazing. I bet it's going to be incredible, because you know the strength of your feeling for this animal and the journey you're going on. But there's a lot of bits where it's just like, do I really need to be doing this puzzle here now?
That brings us back to the whole patience thing as well. You need to learn a whole lot of patience.
Oh yes you do, especially with Trico.
Yo, yes.
He does not like to obey sometimes, but I loved him for that. I loved him for that so much. It's funny because when it came out, we all were having little conversations in the office about. We were like, well, it's almost a weird personality test, because there were all these complaints from people going, oh my god, he never listens to anything you say, it's like broken, it's really annoying, like there's realism and then it's like it's just not doing what you say and you have to scream and shout before it'll do anything, right? And for me, I felt like I never had any of those moments. So it was like, well, either some of us are getting lucky and he's deciding to be obedient, or we just see the times as when he's not responding as like colour and fun, and we notice it less, and perhaps we find it less annoying, and we feel like it lasts less time before he then does do what we say. So it's quite interesting. It's like, who's who's the one who's most patient with him? Maybe that's helping. And does the AI react to that? Like, I mean, I don't know if we ever really had an answer on that. Like, it's so mysterious as to what the whims of this creature's AI was. Pretty amazing.
The thing I think about Trico is that, have you ever owned a dog, like when you were a
Oh
kid?
yeah. Yes. We got a dog when I was 17, I think. Yeah.
Like, you have to have, and like, we keep saying this word, and it's going to mean nothing at this point, but when you're training a dog, you have to learn so much patience. And, I think when training a dog, you need to have, like, that kind of patience. And I think that's what came across for me in The Last Guardian, is that you kind of have to have a similar amount of patience with Trico.
Definitely. Well, I remember when we were on OPM, Dave Meekham actually did the review for us, and he just got a Labrador puppy, and like a lot of his review was built around. He was like, "I've just got a puppy, and it is exactly the same. Like my experience, it's like a real like pet." That you actually have to like crawl into doing things, and he's like, and it's absolutely uncanny. He's like, when I look into Trico's eyes, I see the eyes of my Labrador, and it's completely mad. But they've nailed it, and he ended up giving it a 10 out of 10, to my delight. And I think Matthew Pellet's delight, who's editor at the time as well, he also was one of those people in our camp who believes that, you know, if a game is able to evoke a certain emotional reaction, you know, sometimes if the controls are a bit like PS2 era, then maybe we're gonna give it a free pass. Like, you know, it's funny seeing so many people put stock into that, and I did find them annoying at points, but it was worth it in the end, because, I mean, I've had plenty of other experiences with pinpoint perfect controls, and like none of them have affected me the way that game did. So
I think for all of its imperfections, there is that kind of, I know I said earlier about how there is no such thing as perfection, but that is perfect in a sense for all of its imperfections.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the reason why it is so much of a perfect game, or as close to perfect at the very least, is the fact that there is that, it does instill that sense of, making you think back to when you got your first pet or something like that. They're trying to teach it, and like that, trying to form the connection between you and your dog or your cat or whatever, and trying to teach it to not be a shitty asshole, basically. And so I think that's kind of why The Last Guardian kind of sticks out with me, because I have a near 10-year-old Westie now, and he is like the most doofus idiot ever. But I love that dog. I love him all too much. But I remember when we first got him, and I just thought, like, training him, it was just, oh my god, go on, stop shitting on the floor, stop pissing on the floor. Even was teething so much on my finger, like the first night we got him. Like, not even my hand, my finger. And I was like, and I had to sleep beside him out the living room one night, because somebody had to stay with him just in case he needed a piss. And I was just thinking, and he was teething on my finger, not my hand, my finger. I was just like, why, dog? Why are you doing this to me? But it is that kind of experience that you bond with the dog that stays with you, and it's the same in the kind of roundabout way with The Last Guardian. Like, you do build up this relationship of sorts between you and Trico. Like, Trico's very apprehensive, reluctant at first, and by the end he is essentially your best friend. And like, there is so many similarities to that I think that's kind of why The Last Guardian sticks with me as, like, not only my favourite game of last year, but also, like, one of my top 5 games ever. Like, it is because of that bond between you and Trico. Not the main character in Trico, but I mean you, the player, and Trico, the connection, the relationship you bond with him that sticks with you the most. I think that's why Last Guardian is just perfect.
It's a pretty damn good game.
Which I realise just makes me look like pot kettle black, because I said there is no such thing as perfection, but The Last Guardian is perfect all the same. Which brings us back all the way to the start and saying, yeah, it is a 10 out of 10 game.
Yeah, hell yeah it is. Just like The Witness is, Johnny.
Jesus Christ.
Unquestionably. I will fight anyone who dares to tell me it isn't. It is. Maybe. Yeah, it is.
Well, about that, no. So, now that we've rambled on for nearly 20 minutes with The Last Guardian, which I regret none of it for, so, top 3 games ever. How would they rank for you? Obviously, The Witness at the top, but how would you fill out the rest of that list?
That's really hard. That is really hard. Ooh, I feel like I may have posted this on Twitter recently. God knows what I put. Okay, well, The Witness is number 1 because I'm in awe of that game. I think it's incredible and I had an amazing experience with it. It felt like a life experience. It was so cool. Loved it. Number 2 is probably... see, this is the thing. It's a toss-up between... It's probably got to be a toss-up between New Leaf and Meat Boy, right? I'm trying to think whether there are other things. So many other games, like Bioshock, even Bioshock Infinite, for all its flaws, I loved.
Join the club! Everyone fucking hates that game now!
Oh, I know, I love Infinite. I mean, it's bad in places. God, it's bad in places. But I'll never forget finishing that game and I think it's 2 a.m. in second year of university, and I was in my housemate's room as she was sleeping, and I was just like, oh my god. But yeah, that was cool. It's probably got to be Witness number 1, New Leaf number 2. And oh god, because Phoenix Wright Trials and Tribulations as well blew my goddamn mind. That was amazing. It was the first Phoenix Wright game I played, which was silly because it was the 3rd one in the trilogy. But I think I just asked for it for Christmas because it looked interesting and didn't know any better. But turns out it's actually the best Phoenix Wright game there is, and that's incredible. Yeah, let's just go Witness, New Leaf, and Super Meat Boy because I love it, and I think that is such a great lesson that everyone can learn in just beautiful, pure game design and game feel as well. These controls are beautiful, and I love it. I've got so many happy memories of that game as well. You had me over a barrel there, Johnny, but. I'd love so many games. That's the trouble. Love so many games.
That is life's biggest problem. The best problem they have, but it's the biggest problem.
Really is. What are your 3?
Journey's one. You can listen to my episode.
Aww. Yeah, it'd be spoilers, wouldn't it?
If you haven't listened to it already, then it's on myfavouritegame.net. It's right there to listen to. For everyone to listen to. And for anyone who's part of this show who has just asked me what my favourite free games are, you can find out for themselves. Actually, I
can't believe it hasn't changed since then, though. So much stuff's come out this year.
I'll say this much. My favourite game of this year, I won't spoil it for anyone listening. Actually, no, it'll be out by then. I don't know when this episode comes out. It'll be 2018 by the time this episode comes out. So actually, I can say it. It'll be Nier Automata. And Nier Automata is in my top 10 games ever. It's actually right behind The Last Guardian in terms of my top 10. And in a year that has had Zelda, Mario, a new Uncharted and Horizon and Persona 5, that is the game that literally came out of nowhere for me. Like, I was looking forward to it, but it came out of literally nowhere. Like, I honestly expected it to be, yeah, this is, like, the combat looks good, why not? It's platinum, and the batshit story. Like, and I say this as someone who'd never played the original Nier. I was like, okay, this interests me. I expected it to be maybe low end top 10, something like that. There, not a chance. Up at the top. As of recording this, I don't think any other game is going to beat it this year. I genuinely don't think anything else is going to beat it. And chances are, when this episode comes out, if you hear me gush about Nier Automata for my favourite game of 2017, then that's why. It is such a game that came out of nowhere. It's such a phenomenal game. It is just so phenomenal, and it came out literally nowhere in a year that has had new Zelda, new Super Mario, new 3D Mario, a proper 3D Mario at that, first one since Sunshine, a brand new Uncharted, a prequel to Life is Strange, and Persona 5, all games, all series that have placements in my own top 10 games in itself, because there's Uncharted 2, the original Life is Strange, Persona 4, like, they're all games that you would think would be high up there for me, and yet Nier just came out of nowhere.
It's been a crazy year.
It has been a super, super crazy year for sure.
See, so you did have a new one.
No, not yet. That's still Last of Us, MGS3 and Journey.
Okay.
Not quite. Hey, I said nothing would top Zone of the Enders 2, and I stand by that. I think the only game that will come close to topping Zone of the Enders 2 anytime soon is the 4K HD version of Zone of the Enders 2 coming out in spring.
Oh yeah, that is, isn't it? Remaster.
There you go. Play that. If you've never played Zone of the Enders 2.
I've never played Zone of the Enders 2, actually. I ought to.
Do. Especially now with this 4K version coming out. And with VR. It's so perfect with VR.
Oh man. I sold my VR. Gonna have to borrow one of the offices, I think.
I sold my VR because there was nothing that interested me besides Res Infinite and Drive Club VR, and there was nothing keeping me around.
Worth it for Res, though, wasn't it? Worth.
It was a religious experience for Res Infinite.
Exactly.
And now I have to get one back. I have to get one back now for Zone of the Enders. God. And I'm never letting it go because it's going to be my Zone of the Enders VR box now. In the same way PS Vita TV is my Persona 4 Golden box.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm all about Persona 4 Golden. Yeah, God, Persona 5 this year as well. Again, just another full marks. Amazing.
Like,
what a year. We've been spoiled. We've been spoiled this year. What is it about this year that has gone to shit in the world, but video games better than ever? It's mad.
I made this exact fault last year when everything was going to shit with Trump and Brexit and all that.
It's like there's like opposite graphs where the more the world nosedives, the better video games become. It's like all the devs are like, fuck, we better pull our finger out here, boys. We've got to give these people some escapism. Quick, let them climb anything in Zelda. Maybe that'll make them happy. Oh, dear.
Oh, truly the best year in games ever. I actually think it is. It's certainly the best of my lifetime anyways.
Oh, yeah, for me, easily. But, I mean, so many years to go up against, isn't there?
Yeah.
What was the golden year? Was that in the 90s or the 80s?
1998.
1998. That was golden year, wasn't it?
To
be fair, some bangers came out what came out of golden year? Was that Half-Life 2?
No, Half-Life 1 came out that year.
Half-Life, what else came out? It's like, oh god, I can't remember, but like just everything.
StarCraft, Ocarina of Time.
Would have been Portal as well, wouldn't it?
No, that's 10 years ago.
Oh really?
Yeah, like 10 years ago was in the equation as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because 10 years ago you had Uncharted, Mass Effect, Portal, the entire Orange Box, in fact, Call of Duty, Halo 3. Jesus Christ, that year was mental in itself. But I think this year has it just because of general variety. Holy fuck.
The quality's been high as well. Bloody high. Oh well done, 2017 for now at least. Like, I mean, not on the way that it actually matters, but video games been pretty good. So well, I mean, whatever issue of Edge is on the shelves, please go and buy it. Which you can see here. Well, read more of my thoughts, although this time wonderfully edited down into beautiful words. There's a reason why I don't talk much, because I'm awful at it and I'm much better at writing. So, yes, please do pick up a copy of Edge magazine. We do some incredible work. It's a privilege to work for that magazine and get the sort of access we do. Yeah, it's really amazing. Sort of every month, I'm so excited about what I'm doing, and we genuinely have some like amazing stuff in the works. So yeah, that will certainly be the same for the beginning of 2018, from what I know so far. So do that. If you want to tweet at me, God knows why you'd want to do that. But I am at It's Jen Sim on Twitter. I am mostly tweeting about just what I'm salty about in Overwatch this week, retweeting videos of cockatiels, and probably swearing quite a lot. Yeah, and then occasionally just some other salient video game thoughts, but I mean, don't count on it. Yeah, and I mean, who knows what I'll have going on in 2018. Hopefully I'll get my act together and cobble together enough free time from the incredibly crazy job that is deputy editing on Edge to set up some of my own things. So we'll see. Watch this space.
like tweeting about tomorrow.
Well, oh yeah, I mean, I'm already doing that, so if there's a way to monetize that, maybe I'll have figured it out in 3 months. I'll make an Umaru bot, actually, that might work.
Let me know when you do and I'll follow it.
hit up Andy Kelly for some for some tips on bots, but yeah.